What's up, everybody?
Hi, everyone.
You're like a bull at a china shop over there bumping into stuff. Welcome to
Dude,
Movie
it happens.
Boners. All right. Well, as we're about to get into this episode, what drug of choice are you drinking today?
Oof. I felt kind of wrong picking a beer for today's episode.
I almost showed up with water, to be honest.
But then I leaned into it. Oh, I have that too. But yeah, this feels a little wrong. But we'll stay on brand.
Yeah.
In fact, I even went kind of theme. So it's fucked up a little bit.
Yeah.
And
Good.
I'm sorry. I am drinking Stash IPA from
Okay.
Independence Brewing down here in Austin. They have a little. The reason I feel like I have to kind of apologize because it says it's an enlightening hop trip, and there's really nothing enlightening, at least in a positive light,
Yeah.
about this episode.
Well, I mean, kind of.
You can
It's not like a positive. It's not like a positive trip like some people do drugs and actually get enlightened. No, that doesn't happen in this movie. But yeah, I see where you're going.
Yeah.
Also, there's a stash that gets stolen.
And there's Stash. Yeah.
It's a whole thing.
What are you drinking?
Okay. I also went weirdly perfectly on theme from a new brewery I haven't heard of before called AC Golden Brewing Company in Golden, Colorado. I have the Sneaky 8. It's a double IPA. It's called a Sneaky 8 because, well, it says right here, drink with one eye open. And it's a very sneaky 8% that you don't see coming, much like most users of hard narcotics. You'd think that it's good, and then all of a sudden it bites you in the ass. And that's kind of what this beer is, I think.
You think things are going well and you're invincible, and then it all falls apart.
I could totally handle it.
Yeah,
it's a very good, very it's one of the best double IPAs I've ever had, actually.
Yeah.
They have to print on the can that there's 0% juice because it tastes very juicy.
Oh, weird.
But it's all hops.
Well, this
it's just a magical hops explosion.
Yeah, this Stash IPA from Independence is, it's really tasty. This might be one of the smoothest IPAs I've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it feels weird drinking a beer during this. I'm not gonna lie, but we're gonna make it through. Yeah. Before we get to the heavy.
No, I would say let's start with the most depressing part of the episode, which is that
okay.
in this year's movie draft, not much has changed. You are still winning.
No.
I say still, it's only been 2 weeks since you started winning, but you're still winning. My box office lead did grow a little bit, so I have a chance to come back. But your IMDb rating lead also did increase a little bit. It's mostly because freaking Exorcist Believer dropped like 3 more tenths of a point in the rating. And since Saw X came out on digital, it also dropped a couple tenths of a point. So you were, I don't know, doing all right, I guess. We're in like an awkward lull for the next couple weeks until Hunger Games and Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and the Marvels all come out.
Yeah, I have zero faith in the Marvels, so why did I draft it? It's gonna be the worst.
In the 14th round too, it was like less than halfway through.
I know. Shit.
I mean, it's a Marvel movie. It'll be decent.
It's gonna make a little bit of money, but I feel like it's gonna be Ant-Man 3 all over again, where it's like people saw it and were like, nah, never mind. So
yeah, not a lot. That's kind of what I expect. A 6.1 and a 400 million, maybe. At least it won't be Flash numbers where it's not even 300 million.
Although, how fucking funny would it be if it does worse than the Flash? That would be
That would be
hilarious.
amazing.
But I don't think that's going to happen. So,
Yeah, I don't
yeah.
either.
Yeah.
So
All
yeah,
right. All right.
I'm very curious how the Hunger Games is accepted.
Yeah.
If people still care about that, or if not. I literally just learned. I had no idea anything about it. I just learned that girl that's in the Snow White reboot that's been talking shit about Snow White. Apparently, she's in it, or it's like the main
Hey,
character. I
I
don't
just
remember her
learned
name.
that too, actually. I didn't realize it was the same actress until I saw the first promo photo that Disney released for Snow White, which made me
Mhm.
laugh because
It's supposed to be live action, and it's like all CGI.
yeah. I was like,
Yeah.
wait, okay.
Hmm.
So
It's weird.
we'll have a lot of really bad green screen. Way to stay on point,
Hmm.
Disney. Cool. Cool.
It's really funny watching all the people get upset about the normal people being CGI'd into dwarves instead of actually hiring people with dwarfism who are actors and would like jobs. But they that's out of vogue, I guess, for some reason.
Yeah, I didn't pay like hardly any attention to when people were freaking out over uh what's the average size people, dudes or whatever, to play the dwarves.
Hum-
Uh
yeah.
but I didn't realize it was going to be CGI, but now that it's like, oh, they just completely CGI'd these guys, I get it. Like,
Hmm.
that's really fucking stupid. Disney's just like, are you
Yeah.
tanking on purpose? Is that what's happening here? Are you
Yeah.
just like, we hate
Yeah. And they're
ourselves?
doing the same thing. They're doing the same thing with Wonka too, where uh,
Oompa
all of
Loompas
the
or
Oompa
Hugh
Loompas
Grant?
are like Hugh Grant. Yeah, I'm like that. There are better choices, I think, than that.
Yeah.
But
But
also, I'm not in charge of Disney,
yeah,
so who
we don't make
cares?
those decisions. Uh let's just hope A24 takes over Hollywood essentially and we move
Yeah,
on.
and doesn't they say save it and don't
Yeah,
join
yeah.
it, which is possible.
Don't join
They could
their
get
yeah. So what new shit
they could
have you
get
watched, Jake?
corrupted by it. I watched two new shits. I watched both of them actually star Zach Gilford from Friday Night Lights, which is fun and funny.
Okay.
I watched There's Something Wrong with the Children
Okay.
on Hulu. It's a movie about two couples. One of them has kids, and the other one don't, and they all go on like vacation together, camping in the woods. And they come across this like cave with this pit, and then the couple that's not the parents watches the kids overnight, and the kids sneak out and come back, and they're not the same. They seem different. Um, it was not very good.
Oh.
It was very average to below average as far as horror movies go,
Okay.
but so it was mundane, I would say.
Okay.
Nothing really special to write home about, unless you're really freaked out by children that are trying to kill you.
I mean,
And then they, I mean, you should be, I
you should
guess,
be.
but also they're small and you should be able to overpower them. Just my opinion. And then the other new thing I watched with Zach Gilford in it was The House of the Fall of Usher. No,
The
The
Fall of
Fall of the
House of
House of
Usher. Yeah.
Usher. All those words just freaking
Fucking
order.
great, wasn't it? Please tell me you liked it.
it was it was very, very good. I liked it a lot. Um, I I I liked it a lot. I didn't have really any big problems with it. I wouldn't say I liked it as much as Haunting of Hill House, but Haunting of Hill House is perfect.
Yeah.
Um, I did like it a lot. I liked it more than some of his other stuff, even so. I'd say it's very, very good. Everybody in it is great. The story structure is great. He does the great a great thing with his scary people or characters or images just popping up and scaring the shit out of you, and then over time those things, deities or beings or whatever, end up having more meaning, and you
Yeah.
figure out, oh, that was actually this guy and it's haunting them in this way. I was like, oh, that's a really, really interesting
Yeah.
thing. And it's also definitely, I think, his thickest social commentary, also appropriate for tonight's episode. I think they overlap in themes a lot,
Yeah. Yeah.
as far as pharmaceuticals and things like that. Um, but it wasn't like preachy either. It was also, I think, very balanced and good overall. So I really, really liked
Yeah.
it. If you like, and I'm not like even the biggest Poe fan. Like I like his stuff, but I don't know a lot of his stuff other than like A Telltale Heart. So if I was, I would get even more out of it. All the little
And
nods
there's
and
a
hints and
lot.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure I could just kind of tell from all of the like episode titles and the actual dialogue and poetry and
Mhm.
stuff. The writing is heavily influenced by it, obviously, but also not knowing that stuff didn't take anything away from the experience. It was very, very enjoyable. So I would say high recommend on Follow the House Usher for
I'm so
sure.
happy you liked it. I'm so happy. I loved it. I loved it. It's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. He knows what he's doing for sure, that Mike Flanagan.
It's true.
What about you? Anything
Well,
new?
like you watching a couple new shits, I watched a couple new shits.
Good.
I watched a movie on Netflix. It's called Old Dads. It's with Bill Burr. It's actually written and directed by Bill
Yeah.
Burr. Uh,
Hmm.
very cute movie, very fun. It's very much in his wheelhouse where he just says what everyone's thinking. And it kind of goes very formulaic for these kinds of movies, but it
Hmm.
doesn't go overboard with the formula, which I really appreciated because I was a little worried that, like, oh, don't, like, it's Bill Burr. There's no way.
Yeah.
The movie's about Bill Burr being forced to live in a PC world. Like, you're not going to force Bill
Right.
Burr to be completely PC, guys. It's not happening. But
Yeah. Especially like as a parent in LA,
yeah,
which is the worst possible place.
yes. It was funny. It has some very funny moments in it, and it has some very cringy, like, I found myself really hating about 90% of the characters his character interacts with because they were
Hmm.
just the worst. So, but it was enjoyable. It was funny. It was a nice, just,
I've I've seen some clips from it, and it definitely looks very funny.
yeah.
Almost to the point that I'm surprised Netflix of all people put it on, but it looks very
Yeah, I
funny.
was like, oh, this movie's like never going to see the light of day essentially because it's
Hmm.
because of the dialogue. But I enjoyed it. It was fun. Um and then I have to talk about this because this was awesome. This was such a special moment for me.
Okay.
My daughter, about a month ago, asked me. Now, my kid does not like spooky thing or movies, especially. She's not down for the spookiness.
Yeah.
Doesn't care for it. Doesn't
Hmm.
really want to watch any of it yet. Um, but she came up to me about a month
She's
ago.
rebelling against her father.
Right. Which it happens. She comes up to me about a
Yeah.
month ago and asked me if I would take her to her first spooky movie in the theater. And it was like, hell yeah, I'm going to. So my daughter wanted to go see Five Nights at Freddy's because she knows the game, she knows the books, her friends of it, like she's been around it.
Mhm.
It's been a pretty big popular thing. So yeah, went and saw Five Nights at Freddy's. It was entertaining. It's silly. It's super
Yeah.
campy. It's funny. It's fun. Um, I noticed people were doing a lot of bitching about it. And I was like, anyone who went into Five Nights at Freddy's expecting
Mhm.
stellar horror or like
Right.
elevated horror or anything on that caliber,
Mhm.
what the fuck are you doing? It's a movie about haunted animatronics. Like, it's based on a
Yeah.
mobile phone game. Get over yourselves.
Right. The game's like the simplest thing ever.
It's, yeah, get
Doesn't
over
have a ton
yourselves.
of story involved.
For what they were doing and the story they were telling, it was very enjoyable, very entertaining. And my kid came out of that movie ecstatic. she's been talking nonstop about it. She loved it. Like, it was a special moment, very heartwarming. Got to take my kid to her first
Mhm.
spooky movie. So I feel like I had the sentimental eyeglasses on watching it of just like, this movie's perfect, but I know it's not. Uh,
Yeah.
but very
Yeah,
fun.
special moment for
Yeah.
sure.
Very, very fun.
How would you compare it to, Willy's Wonderland?
Well, Willy's Wonderland was
But
already kind of like, yeah, we kind of based it on the Five Nights game, because at that point the movie Five Nights at Freddy's was in like super limbo. Studios knew they
mhm.
wanted to make it, but no one was like really biting it. Um, Willy's is like the more grown up version. Yeah,
Yeah, it does get more
it's a
violent for
little more
sure,
violent. It's
I
definitely
imagine.
bloodier. It has a sex scene in it, which is hilarious because haunted
I
animatronics.
forgot
Yeah.
about that.
Whereas Five Nights at Freddy's is just fun. It was just enjoyable.
Yeah,
Um,
and it doesn't have Nick
and it
Cage in
doesn't
it.
have Nick Cage, but
Strike against it.
it was still very entertaining to me. So I enjoyed it. I
Good.
very much enjoyed it. Yeah. And I found myself
That's awesome.
kind of bummed because I saw its numbers and I was like, well, shit. I kind of wish I would have paid a little more attention and maybe drafted it because it would have boosted my box office numbers in our draft. But I did not.
Mhm.
So that's okay.
Yeah, all of the major movies right now we completely ignored or didn't know about.
Right.
Oh,
Go
well, win
us.
some, you lose some.
But yeah, so that was all
Alright,
the new things that I watched.
very cool. Alright, so I guess before we get into the episode, we should say go subscribe on YouTube because it helps us out a lot.
Yeah.
And we want to do cool stuff like live streams
Mhm.
and things like that. And so it would be more worth it if we had subscribers there, obviously. And then if you are all caught up on episodes and you want something else to watch or listen to, we do have those bonus episodes with the Beat Critics and Film versus Film podcast. We did 2 guest episodes in October, and those are still out there and always will be. Fun times. You can find them all on movieboners.com. I put them there actually, but they're also on Spotify and
Right.
all the other places. So check that out. And yeah, we love you and we appreciate you and all of that good
Subscribe,
stuff.
like, comment, do all that stuff. Interact with us. I know we do a lot of heavy talk about how much we love movies and kind of what we get from them. We would love to hear from you on how the movies do the same or whatever for you. So interact. It's funny to get Jake triggered because he will instantly go into internet argument with you if you challenge him. It's hilarious.
I've been pretty good
No, you
lately.
have. You have.
Although I unrelated had a little, I guess you could say, dust up. Um, there was some post on Instagram that I just made a very benign and harmless comment on, and then everybody else got into fights and were
That's
just commenting
true.
back and forth. And a couple of times I was like, "Hey, get people, all of you commenting, none of you are cool. Everybody's wrong. Go outside and touch grass." Because you're all mad at each other and defending these movies that nobody gets any benefit out of.
And that just triggers more stuff. It was kind of funny having like my phone just blowing up. Like
Yeah,
Jake's not even interacting. Like he's not even a part of this.
I but didn't even start it. They just chose my comment to get
Yeah.
upset
Yeah.
about the movie on.
It was
But I
funny.
will say, Instagram has been really fun lately. A lot of great
Yeah.
people on
Yeah.
there, and a lot of great conversations about John Carpenter last episode, and just all kinds of random stuff we post there. So yeah, if you're on Instagram, that's kind of the place to be. That's where we are most
Yeah.
often.
So check it out, interact. It's fun. Yeah. Well,
All right, you know it's not fun. Drug addiction.
yeah. So I feel like we should probably preface this episode. First off, this will probably be the least funny or feel good
Or it'll be the most inappropriately
or
funny,
inappropriate. I
probably.
don't know how this will go. Obviously, I'm going to have a ton to say because I love this movie so much. For my daughter challenged me on why I love this movie so much because I was trying to describe it to her, and she was like,
Yeah.
"This sounds just terrible. And I was like it is, but it's such a well-made terrible
Yeah.
story. Um,
Yeah.
but
That's the thing about
I
growing
feel
up.
like
Sometimes you latch on to things that are terrible, but you love them
yeah,
for
I
their
really do
darkness,
love
kind
this
of,
movie. The movie's incredible in
and
my
their
opinion.
honesty, I think.
It's so good, but its message is very relevant and important in my opinion. It just it doesn't shy away from a terrible, terrible truth,
Yeah.
and that terrible truth can be a little off-putting. So yeah, drug addiction's bad in like all forms. Addiction in general
Yeah.
is very dangerous, slippery scope, but thankfully we have a
Yeah,
movie
drugs are bad.
that will let you know just how bad it can kind of get. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed kind of all the different levels that it works on, and I think I was nervous going into it. So like I said when we set it up last episode, it's one of your favorite
Mhm.
movies. You've seen it a bunch. You're a huge advocate for people seeing this movie. You've been an advocate for me seeing this movie, and I've just been avoiding it because A, I've I'm not the biggest like emotional movie
Right.
fan because it requires emotions from me and I'd rather not give them that. But at the same time, I do really love Darren Aronofsky's movies, but I'm fully aware of how brutal they can
Yeah.
be, and how honest and unapologetically, just showing you everything, even kind of against your will. And so I was nervous going into it. I will say it was a little bit more tame than I expected. I expected the worst. I would say it wasn't as intense as even like Mother. I think Mother's probably the most intense of his movies, but it was intense for sure. And there's a lot of really great reasons for
Yeah.
that. But overall, I'm very glad I saw it. I definitely liked it as well, and I would recommend it, um, to everybody. It's one of those movies that I think you said it's not for entertainment.
No.
It's kind of just an important piece of art that has meaning and a message that tries to get something across, and it definitely does
Mhm.
that very well, I think.
Yeah. It's funny because like the first time I ever saw it, I had heard of kind of the reputation that the movie had going into it, and it wasn't even that old by the time I saw it. It was only a few years old because it came out in 2000, 2001, right in that
2000, yeah.
area. I saw it when I was like 15, so I saw it just a year or two after it came out, honestly. But it had
Mhm.
already earned a huge reputation. Now, the people that told me about it, they kind of tried to hype it up. It ended up kind of getting in that mix with like Fight Club, those kinds of movies where like they have notoriety.
Mhm.
There's something about them that's like so rebellious to the mainstream, and
Mhm.
certain groups, especially teenage groups, I think latch onto that of like, ooh, it goes against the grain, so we're gonna like it.
Mhm.
We'll latch onto one thing. And the only thing that I was told that people, or I kind of like got a sense of people latching onto, is there is a scene where it is a close up shot of a character shooting up into an infected arm. And everyone
Yeah.
was like, ooh, it's like close up, you see it, it's so gross. And that was like the only scene anyone ever talked about. So when I watched it the first time,
That's not even the worst part
right.
of the whole
I
movie.
mean, it's gross for sure,
It is gross.
but I found myself like that is yeah, it's a disturbing scene. It's very short and it's not like super
Mhm.
super close up. Yeah, there's a little bit of sound effect going into it, but uh I found myself latching on to just the overall like to me, I mean, I know you just said like it wasn't as intense as Mother, but I think it's on such a different plane of intensity. Mother's like
Mhm.
legit kind of a Darren Aronofsky version of horror, which ends up being
Yeah,
just,
it's more like a fantasy
yeah,
story
and it's like,
that you're not deeply invested in with, like, these are real people in
right.
real life kinda
Yeah,
stuff.
Mother is a 2-hour anxiety, like, hellfest, whereas Requiem for a Dream is just like, it's intense because it's so in your face and quickly,
Mhm.
and you fall into this train. You feel like you're falling with these characters. And I found that
Yeah.
first time I watched it, I remember just really knowing and understanding very quickly throughout this movie, like, this is important. Like, this movie, I am
Mhm.
fully invested in this film. These characters, I want to root for them. I'm trying to root for them. And
Mhm.
by the time it concludes, you're like, Jesus fucking Christ, what is like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, they're kind of helpless in a way to their own
yeah.
devices.
And I watched it at an interesting juncture in my life. Not necessarily with hard drugs, obviously. Well, I say obviously, but you guys don't know me personally. Um, Not with hard drugs, but I was like, I was smoking a ton of weed and I was doing a lot of drinking at the time that I saw this movie. Like, I was not living a necessarily clean life. So to watch this movie as you're like 15 and that teen, I mean, Harry, the main character, he's like 20 years old, 21 years old in the film. That's pretty
Yeah.
close. That's pretty close to like
Yeah.
the age that I watched it. And I remember just thinking, like, man, this is feeling real. Like, the Requiem for a
Mhm.
Dream is one of the most intense movies for me because it felt so real and prevalent and like kind of dooming. It's kind of that like
Yeah.
you could end up as any one of these. Like, just, oh shit. Uh
Yeah.
yeah, it's not a happy movie. Like at
Yeah,
all.
I think everything that you said is all true, and we're not the first people to say it. I saw that Premiere Magazine put it on the 25 most
Yeah.
dangerous movies ever made, and when I saw that, I was like, I thought that was like a bad thing. I thought they were like saying you shouldn't watch it, but their list is really, the point is that it's not entertainment. They're not rides or diversions. They're galvanizing experiences that place squarely in your face all the stuff Hollywood assumes that you go to the movies to get away from.
Mhm.
And so these movies will challenge your ideas and about life and love and stuff. And so I do think that this movie does that. I think that it's, like you said, not entertainment, but it's a piece of art that kind of holds up in your face a mirror. It's not just, oh, there's some junkies that do
Mhm.
this. It's like, no, there's a human condition that we're all pretty susceptible to. It's not just hard drugs. It can be weed, it can be coffee, it can be like
His
you're all kind of addicted to
yeah.
something. The mom character, Sarah, I was the most kind of
Yep.
invested in, where initially she's more addicted to food and just comfort, and then it tries to get away from that and can't. I think the more that you abuse anything, the harder it is to change your
Mhm.
lifestyle, even if it's something as normal as food. Um, and so that was really interesting. I think that it can be anything. It can be comfort, it can be images, it can be whatever sort of things you fill your time and life with. You can become addicted to that, just as it's just the way humans are
Yeah.
wired. And you would and so it's important to know that, and you would think that the people that understand how human beings work the most would be doctors, but they seem to not really be doing a good job of keeping track of that and not prescribing drugs. And if you don't react well to a drug, they don't pull you off of it. They just give you another drug to balance it out, and it just gets out of control. So I think there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, there is. Sarah is, man, I think she's just one of Ellen Burstyn's portrayal of Sarah to me is like tragically underrated. If you want to go down
Yeah.
like the path of just great performances, I'm like, Ellen Burstyn as Sarah Goldfarb is why Requiem is so intense. Jared Leto
Yeah.
gets all the kind of spotlight because it's Jared Leto, but I'm like,
Mhm.
the movie. I mean, every character in this movie, well, the big four, they're all the main character. The movie is
Yeah.
following all of them very, very tightly. You know their stories, but I
Mhm.
argue Sarah Goldfarb is like the heart of the movie. She's the one that really drives home the message of the human condition, like what you were saying. Um,
Yeah, it can happen to
it can
anybody
happen to anybody,
for
and
any
it
reason.
can and typically happens before you ever even realize,
Yeah.
or if you ever actually realize, and it can drive you mad. It can totally just bottom your life out where
Mhm.
it's all gone. I think Sarah's journey in this movie is probably the most heartbreaking out of the four journeys. Um,
Mhm.
I didn't figure we would jump into her story right out the gate, but I feel like, well, we're here, so we might as well. Uh,
Yeah.
Man, I feel so bad for Sarah. She's just like, you side with her. You love her right out the gate because she's just this like
Oh, yeah.
seemingly she's
She's a sweet old
sweet old
lady.
lady. She's lonely, but the opening of the movie is her and Harry having an argument because he's going to pawn her TV off so he can get money for heroin. Um,
Mhm.
and she's scared of Harry. To me, like right out the gate, it's like she loves her son, but she's afraid of him to the point where she's literally locking herself in her room and watching him have
Mhm.
a tantrum through the keyhole. That's
That opening scene, I was in love with the movie immediately, not just for the commitment of the actors, and you immediately understand all of the dynamic between them and their performances. That's all great. But specifically, Aronofsky's style and choices directorially, particularly with the split
mhm.
screen shot that he does there, I was like, I know must have seen a split screen shot like this before, but I can't think of where. And I'm so shocked that more people don't do it because it was so effective to be able to kind of track two sides of the door, what's happening
Right.
inside, what's happening outside at the same time in real time, both of them cutting randomly. Um, to show you different things, and it just felt very kinetic. The whole movie is kind of like that, very kinetic, and it gets even more so as time goes
Right.
on. Um, I've read a thing that a normal 100-minute movie has like 700,
Right.
800 cuts in it, and Requiem has over double that. It has over 2,000 cuts in it, and you feel it, especially towards the
Yeah.
end. You're like, this is just nonstop
Well, and
moving
it's
crazy, but in a good way.
yeah, Aronofsky filmed it kind of in the style of like a hip hop montage music video almost, where it's very hard, very quick cuts, where it's just image after image, scene after scene.
Hmm.
And he did it for a reason. And the flow of the movie is super interesting to me because it's like a high. The movie is
Yeah.
essentially a high. It starts off kind of like with fear. Then you're like, oh, this is really
Mhm.
cool. This is fine. I feel great. I feel great. Something's not
Totally in
right, but
control of
I
this.
think I can do this.
Yeah.
We're good. And then it's the come down or the fallout, and it's just chaos and chaos, and nothing good comes from it. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, the opening with the split screen, I love. That was one of the early things about the movie that struck me too, because it's so different. A lot of
Mhm.
movies kind of start off slow. They kind of start off like, okay, so we're gonna just kind of lay the groundwork a little bit here. Requiem and Darren
Mhm.
Aronofsky's vision is like, oh no, we're going full on. Like he needs his fix. She's kind of afraid of his
Mhm.
like his behavior right now. She chains the TV and then she's trying to tell him it's not for you, it's for the robbers. And you're like, he's literally the only one.
Yeah. He's also the only one trying to take your
Yeah.
TV right now.
Um, and just the way that he kind of
Yeah.
manipulates her. Like he breaks her
Mhm.
down, really. It's not even a full manipulation. It's just he's breaking her down. Uh you kind of can't help but kind of hate Harry. at the beginning there.
Yeah. I think certainly at the beginning, through most of the movie, I think there's one point where he kind of turns and you understand he's at least self-aware
Mhm.
of what he's doing. And it's with his mom. It's the scene where she tells him that she's taking those diet pills,
Yeah.
and he's like, "No, mom, no." I know that they're drugs, and I know what they're doing to you, and it's you can tell that he knows he's being super hypocritical, but also he kind of cares about her more than he cares about
Yeah.
himself in that
Yeah.
moment.
Oh
And so
man,
you kind of get it.
that scene. I feel like it's too early in our discussion for that scene, but again,
We can come back to it.
yeah, I say we come back to it because that scene deserves like attention. There's a lot
Okay.
to that scene that I was like constantly just always been blown away by it, but after reading some fun stuff about the making of it, watching some making of stuff, um, and then just watching it at current, like we're in our mid 30s, watching that scene
Right.
now kind of has a new profound effect, or at least it does to me. Um,
Hmm.
but I think focusing on Harry and Tyrone and Marion first, I think that's kind of where I feel we should
Yeah.
focus first. Um,
Okay.
just because
Yeah. It's
Sarah's so intense and she's the heart, so I feel like I don't want to get to the heart of it quite yet. Uh, if you're okay
fair
with that,
enough.
Jake. If
Yeah,
you're
there's a lot. There's a lot of other layers to cut through first, for
there
sure.
are.
Um, I did really enjoy how the movie was it was broken up into seasons.
Yeah.
And this is kind of jumping around a little, but you start off in summer, and it is very much feels like summer. It's like more happy, more sunny, more, not as cold, not as uncomfortable. It's summer. It's nice. But in my mind, when I see movies do that, I was like, oh, okay, we're going to go through all the seasons then. We're going to have summer and fall and winter and spring. And then we get into fall, and everything is falling apart. And I'm like, these people aren't going to survive
There
until
is.
winter. Like, I don't know.
I kind of appreciate that. I know you and I in the past have kind of like given a little shit about movies that'll do this, where they're like they don't try to be subtle, or it's just so like the metaphor isn't a
Hmm.
metaphor anymore. This is just you're blatantly just like, and here it is. But
Hmm.
the way that Requiem for a Dream does that transition from summer to fall, and it's right in line with
Hmm.
like, oh, this is where it all like literally falls apart.
Yeah. Shit hitting the
It
fan for Tyrone. Yeah.
There is no other way. I cannot think of
Mm.
any other way for this movie to just because it's so abrupt. I mean, with the sound effect of the bars falling and like slamming shut, um,
Hmm.
and the music, just like that dooming music that kicks in, you're like, oh god, this is.
Yeah. Here we go.
You're like, I mean, summer got a little rough towards the end there, but this is a little all right. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah, and I didn't realize it on the first watch. Obviously, I watched it for the very first time ever, and we were most of the way through fall, and I was like, I don't know if I can get through two more seasons. And I didn't realize until the second watch I had like 7 minutes
right.
left of the
Yeah,
movie.
because there's
I was
only
like,
two
okay,
seasons in the movie.
yeah, which I really liked. I think that because of that device to make me think of, oh, well, if you have one
Mhm.
season, we're going to go through to the next year and do all the seasons and all the stuff. It made me think of these characters outside of the movie. Like, where do they go after this?
Mhm.
What is their winter like? What is their spring like? What is the next year like? These are people in the real world that are going to continue to exist. And I think it just drove home the relationship that I had with these characters more, to know like they're going to exist beyond this, even though we only see them for two
Right.
seasons.
Um,
Yeah.
I was very curious. I wanted to text you so bad, but I was like having restraint because I don't know when he's getting this watched. I knew it was the first time you were
Yeah.
watching it. Um, I was really curious, Jake, primarily because I know your past does not really have like any kind of experience
No.
with the substance abuse, drug addiction, and stuff. You
I'm not a party boy.
Yeah, you weren't ever really around it. I mean, I think, and I could
Mhm.
be wrong. I think the worst that you may have been around was like when I used to party and you like hung out with us a couple times. Um,
Yeah, I was like, "This is a lot of alcohol that you're consuming," and this person threw up on my shoes, but that's about it,
yeah.
yeah. Nothing too terrible. And it was always kind of weird to me because I'm so removed from kind of drug
Mhm.
culture that when people are just talking casually about, oh, well, you got this cocaine and we did this and we did that. I was like, how do you even do that? Like, wouldn't even know where to start. I don't understand. I don't know any of these people. Like, it seems so foreign to me, but I know that it's kind of the thing that once you're in it, you're really in
Yeah.
it, especially for these characters. So I certainly wasn't confused about what's
No,
going on
I
or
didn't think
anything
you'd be
like that.
confused. I think my curiosity was more um of just kind of how much were you figuring, or did you think some of it was like overly exaggerated at all, or did it do a decent job of kind of
No.
giving you a fair idea of what kind of like the real bad side of this stuff can be like?
Yeah, it seemed exactly like how I imagine it would be or how I mean, I have heard some stories, I've seen other
Mhm.
documentaries, I've seen, like, book learning
Right,
side
right.
of the stuff, but I think that it's exactly how I imagine it would be, and particularly just how I understand, I think, from a human side, how these characters are attracted to
Mhm.
that. Like, even though I've never done those kinds of things, I've done other things and felt like, oh, I can't give this up, or I need to do this in order to feel better, or whatever. I think we've all done that, and so to go into something with the best of intentions, whether it's diet pills or just pain relievers or whatever, um, and then kind of just having it become a habit and then being like feeling like you can control it, it's no big deal, it doesn't hurt anybody else, all of those things are super real and super believable. I think
Mhm.
it presents it very, very well.
Cool. Yeah, I was curious because like I've seen kind of up close a couple times of people on that downward spiral of you're seeing them really
Okay.
bottoming out.
Yeah.
And when I watch Requiem, it for me there is a heightened sense of intensity or just realism because like I've seen people kind of in this, maybe not to that extreme,
Hmm.
or maybe it was and I just don't know. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, it to me it's like, yeah, this is very on, which is kind of even
Hmm.
more heartbreaking. You know, as if Requiem for a Dream was not tough enough to get through. How many?
Yeah, and it was also, I think, I'd never heard anything about like the opioid epidemic until the last few
Right.
years, couple years. So this is well before that. This is made over 20 years ago. So I think that even though I may have not experienced any of that, I've seen more of it, and the susceptibility of people to those drugs because of the opioid epidemic and how it's become more people becoming more aware of it, I think. And I think it's things like Requiem that are good to shine a light on it, um, especially as well, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. How many times did you just watch it the once, or did you persevere and
I watched it
twice?
twice. Yeah, I definitely watched it twice, and it particularly because it wasn't that bad. I have heard everybody say when you're like, oh, are going to watch Requiem for a Dream, everybody says, "Ooh, that's a heavy movie. Like that's a rough one," and all this stuff. And so I was kind of prepared and expected the worst, and it wasn't as bad as I was expected. I could have handled more,
Okay.
so it wasn't too much of a chore to watch it a
Yeah,
second time
that's good. I
because it is very good.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like what makes people kind of say, like, because everyone does, whoever has seen Requiem typically has that reaction. It's exactly what you said. I've done it to people too when they bring it up, because it's the immediate like, oof.
Mhm.
And for me, it's just
Yeah.
like the whole final 10 minutes of the movie just like plays in my head. And that's what's so
Yeah.
intense of just that, oof, man, it's
Mhm.
so heightened and so chaotic. For you, I would imagine it probably didn't seem so chaotic or whatever, just because like you've seen Mother, you've seen Black Swan,
Yeah.
like you've seen grown up Darren Aronofsky, not super early Darren
Not
Aronofsky.
baby second movie
Right,
Darren
right.
Aronofsky, yeah.
But it is, I always tell people like it's one of the most depressing films like ever made. I still stand by that. You don't, when it ends, when those end credits roll, you're not like left going, oh right, oh happy day. Like
Yeah,
you don't just get
it's
up
not
and like move
inspirational.
on with like, oh, all right, I guess that's 2 hours.
Mhm.
It sits with you. It just kind of like it's a lingering film, a lingering story. Um, Probably particularly with people that have
Yeah.
addiction stuff or have been a part of it or seen it. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I was very curious. I was like, man, I wonder how Jake's doing. Did you feel, because I always tell people like make sure you got a happy movie lined up, like I told you the same thing. Did you find yourself kind of being like, well, I
Yeah.
think I'm going to prep for our next episode at the same time? Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Before and after each watch, I was like, well, I need to watch a shitload of comedies for next episode. So I'm definitely doing that.
It does kind of help. The comedy does help be a palate cleanser. Even I did that, and I've seen Requiem. I do it every time I watch Requiem, and like I'm ready for a little cleansing, if you will. Um,
Mm.
but I
Yeah,
never
definitely
considered
is
the
a
movie
good
to be
thing.
bad. I just feel that it's heavy because it is an emotional movie. It's not like you're gonna cry during the movie. I never expect people to cry during it, and maybe you do. Nothing wrong with that. Um,
Yeah.
it's a heavy
Yeah.
film just
I
because of
wouldn't
the
say that
content.
it's not like sad necessarily in the way that something sad happens and you feel so bad for them, and like, I don't know, most movies that you cry at, it's like a really heightened specific thing.
Right.
This is more of like a lifelong dread. Like, these people are making these choices that there's no going back from, and they will have lifelong implications,
Yeah.
complications, lose an arm, all of this stuff. You can never forget the things you did to score and all that stuff. So
Yeah, it's
it's you just have a general just dread for them and their life.
yeah. You know what I find myself thinking every time I watch this, and it started from that first time I watched it. Um, Marlon Wayans. I kind of want to
Yeah,
focus on Marlon Wayans for a second. Everyone knows Marlon Wayans as like slapstick, just stupid comedy, in and out. I
yeah,
think he's done a couple other serious roles, but for the majority of his career, it's
hmm,
been silly comedy or just gross comedy. Uh, but he is incredible in this
hmm.
movie. He starts off as like you think he's going to be cracking a bunch of jokes. I mean, his first scene, he's getting high um,
Yeah,
and
they
dancing
look
in
like
the
they're having
living
a
room.
fun time. Yeah.
Yeah, with some groovy tunes that you're like, this is cool. And then when you rewatch it, you're like, oh my God, the music and the way the movie's structured, it's a high. This is not cool. This is
Hmm.
very bad. This is very, very bad.
Yeah, it's foreshadowing of a warning.
Well, Harry even has the line after they get the first stash of like,
Yeah.
ooh, here we go, the first step to our big break. And Harry flat out says, like, man, if we get high, we're just gonna
Hmm.
fuck this all up. Yep. Yeah,
Yeah,
really did.
but we should try it out and make sure
We
it's
should
actually
try it
good
out. Yeah.
before we sell it.
But Marlon Wayans takes me off guard every time I watch this movie because he's so on point and he's so good throughout the movie. Even his emotional scenes, even the scenes where he's just like
Yeah.
kind of standing quietly and just like he's thinking about his mom and his childhood,
Right.
which are also heartbreaking moments in the movie because it's just like
Yeah.
it. It's scary. Those flashbacks of his mom terrified the shit out of me on the
Oh,
rewatch for
really? Why is
this
that?
episode and the last couple
Yeah.
times I've watched it, because it, to me, it just like it does such a great job of like children start off so innocent,
Yeah.
and they start off so like you're loving, you're wrapping them in your arms, and the world is like great. It's a clean
Right.
world out there. The kid has every opportunity. It's so beautiful. And then it comes right back to Tyrone right as you're like, oh, sweet moment. And you're instantly like, oh, heroin addiction and crime. And
Yeah.
where did it go wrong? Like, what
Yeah.
happened to him?
I'm not gonna lie. That scene with his mom kind of affected me, even though I'm not a mom. I am a dad, and when you have a young little baby, you really are concerned about every single thing that goes into their
Mhm.
body, every substance, all the food, all the things. Like you want them, they're pure, they're perfect. There's like you don't want
Right.
to introduce anything that's bad into there. And yeah, they have the world at the feet, full of potential, all the things they could be. And so to see him grow up and make those decisions and pump his body full of junk and then have that like vision of, oh mom, I made it, I did these things,
Yeah.
I could have done these things. You realize what he could have done, what he could have achieved, what he and his friends could have had, um, and what was wasted. That was really really sad for
Yeah.
sure.
It just, it was definitely the parent side of me that
Hmm.
was triggered and scared, and has been the last handful of times that I've watched Requiem, because yeah, as a parent, you're like, I mean, it's a weird line to walk, and I feel every parent probably,
Hmm.
I guess, technically fails it in some form, where you're like, I want my child to be prepared and ready for the world,
Hmm.
but I want to preserve and protect their innocence
Yeah.
and protect them from certain things. It's a weird line to try and walk. And for me, like, it just, obviously, I'm hoping and just please don't let my
Yeah.
my child go down this road, this path. Um, but that's what was scary to me, was just like how quickly and
Hmm.
how unassuming this kind of thing takes hold and doesn't want to let up. And
Yeah.
that's a frightening thing, especially as a parent. Sorry,
Yeah.
mom and
Yeah,
dad.
it's a huge contradiction to want them to be so safe and want to make sure that they're safe, but it's also your job to slowly let go and let them make their own
Yeah.
choices and do what they want to do and take risks and learn from their mistakes and all that stuff, and they have to make mistakes in order to learn from them, and it's a whole thing.
You're like, but I
But
don't
yeah,
want
yeah, we've had the conversation where like if our kid it becomes like strung out addicted to something, what would we do? And we're like, we're fucking locking him in the basement. I don't give a fuck. He's going like completely. We'll do anything to get him off of it because yeah, it is the saddest thing in the world to see them like that. And there's like no lengths that you wouldn't go to try to get them off of it. I think.
right. It's a frightening thing as a parent to kind of like, you don't want to consider it, right? It's a
Yeah.
notion that you're like, I'm going to actively reject this notion.
Hmm.
But in the back of your mind, you're like, I hope.
Yeah.
Like,
You also don't wanna be like, "Oh, it'll never happen. They'll never be exposed to it.
right,
They'll never have
right.
this problem."
It's frightening. That's kind of one of the reasons why I'm such an advocate for high school, especially like senior class kids, to see this
Yeah.
movie. Yeah, you can skip the sex scene between Tyrone and his girl. You don't need the sex scene. Um,
I yeah. There's it is weird not to get away from the serious stuff, but on a funny note, I can't think of the last time I saw a movie that had, an actress show her bush, but not her boobs. but because there's a scene where Jennifer Connelly does that. I was like, that's a weird choice.
You know what's funny? I did not notice that
Really?
for the longest fucking time. Never noticed
Mhm.
it. Just completely oblivious to it
Yeah.
until
I
like
noticed it first thing.
until like 5 years ago when I rewatched it. I did one of those crazy things, which I mean, it's a dangerous thing to do. I'm all about binging a series or like, hey, let's just have a marathon. They're fun. Until you're like, one day you get this weird itch and you're like, it sounds like a great idea. I'm going to
Mhm.
marathon Darren Aronofsky films. And you're like, go
Don't
through
do that.
Pi. And at that time, it was like Pi through uh, Mother. Yeah. Or no, Pi
Okay.
through Noah's Ark.
Okay.
It
Yeah,
was
I
either
think it's before
Noah
Mother came
or
out.
Mother, which either one. But I
Right.
was like, well, marathon, it's like 5 movies. And by the time you're finished, you're like, well,
Yeah. On paper, you're like, it's only 5 movies.
when you do
But
it, you're
it
like, God damn it, what the fuck did I do to myself? Um,
yeah.
yeah, I didn't notice it until I did that marathon. And it took me off guard because I was like, she's like, that's
Has her
weird.
bush been in this movie the whole time?
Right. It was very like, what the fuck? Um, and I've thought about it, especially this time, because now I know that it's there, and I do feel like
Mm,
what a interesting decision. Uh,
yeah.
I couldn't find any real tidbit on that decision, except well, maybe this
Mhm.
was like, I mean, she's getting high with Harry the whole time throughout the movie,
Yeah.
maybe, and she's clearly high when she's
Right.
staring at herself in the mirror. So I was kind of thinking, well, maybe this is like post like sex with Harry,
Coitus. Yeah.
and she's just kind of like she just threw the shirt on to like use the restroom, and that's what she's doing, which
Mhm.
kind of would make sense, but at the same time, yeah, weird decision. And I was like, well, okay, Jennifer Connelly.
Mhm.
I,
Yeah, her character, Marion, is with Sarah, I think my favorite part of the movie. Like Sarah and Marion, I definitely gravitated the most to. I don't know if it's like an empathy thing or just caring about them because
yeah,
they're the ladies of the group, but this particularly Marion and her path, it just was so heartbreaking to see kind of where she goes and that she's kind of just involved. You don't really know like how she got into drugs, like if Harry introduced her or if she
mhm.
kind of was already and that's how they met. They had a similar interest or whatever. But when he kind of leaves her to go do his own thing, he needs to try to get his business back up and running. um, she's kind of left alone and doesn't know what to do and turns to what she feels is her only value, which is sad that she needs to instead find a sugar daddy or pimp or
Mhm.
whatever. And it's just the most heartbreaking thing to see her go down that path and not be able to like pull herself out of it.
Yeah, Marion is, I think it's interesting that you brought up Sarah alongside Marion, because they kind of, at least they're an interesting contrast to each other. Um,
Yeah.
where Sarah is like the accidental addiction, accidental kind of just caught up in so much, and it's all perpetuated from her loneliness of kind of being
Hmm.
abandoned. Well, yeah, I mean, her husband has passed away. Harry is always gone. She doesn't know where or when she's ever going to see him, if she's ever going to see him again.
Yeah.
Um, and she accidentally gets herself hooked on this stuff from this notion of possible acknowledgement.
Hmm.
Whereas Marion is acted like she purposely got into drugs. She has her line of like, my family's wealthy. I'm just kind of, she's basically rebelling against her family because they're trying to just dote on her and they just give her what she
Hmm.
wants, or at least that's what she kind of alludes to.
Hmm.
But their endings what is so contrast, like such a powerful contrast to me. Where they're both heartbreaking and very tragic, but Sarah's is like, God damn, she just totally lost control, whereas Marion just
Mhm.
out gives it up and is
Right.
kind of okay with it in a real dangerous kind of way. Her final scene in the movie
Mhm.
to me is always just like, it's the scariest part of addiction to me. And I
Yeah.
think it's such an incredible decision on Aronofsky's part to have it be Marion be the one to kind of show that actual, like, not only did she decide to turn this route to do what she
Mhm.
wants to get her fix, but she's kind of like, she's more happy, or she's happier about just getting the drugs, and
Right.
the how be damned. That
At any cost, yeah.
that is very like, oh my god. Like,
Yeah.
that's so
You will willingly sell yourself into slavery, basically, in order to feel better, in order
yeah,
to have a little fix,
to
and
have
it's just the
a
saddest thing.
high. Um,
Yeah.
and let's face it, what is that? Keith David plays that guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It has been, and it probably has something to still do with our top 10 controversial that we did,
Okay. Yeah,
that
yeah.
bit us in the ass. But there's things just seem so exponentially grosser to me on
Yeah.
certain levels at times, and his character, that her where her journey takes her, is always been gross. If you sit back and
Mhm.
watch that whole sequence and you're like, okay,
Mhm.
you need to have a hard long talk with
Evaluate.
yourself and probably a therapist. um
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
always
long
been gross.
long, hard look in the mirror.
Yeah, but that sequence is so disgusting, from their
Mhm.
little first meeting and then obviously the party that she goes to. um it's just so gross, dude. Like, I found
Yeah.
myself just, oh, this is, I know Aronofsky does a good job, especially with that first interview where he's alluding to so much. You're not actually
Yeah.
seeing anything, and it makes it just so bad in your head. And then the party
Mhm.
is pretty, luckily, I'm glad the party is spliced the way it is and like cut the way it is
Yeah.
into the chaos. Because I honestly don't think I would ever be able to handle just a
Yeah, if
focused.
it was a continuous "this is Marion's experience" like segment, that would be much worse.
I think it would
But it
ruin the movie.
goes back and forth between Harry and Tyrone and Marion and Sarah, and
Yeah.
so you are able to handle it, stomach it a little bit more.
Which, stomaching that whole conclusion is, that's the tough part. Is just like, because you're
Yeah.
watching everything just bottom out, but we'll get to
It's
that.
also that party where I was like, I like Darren Aronofsky does this thing where it slowly builds up, and as it keeps going, it's going to get worse, and you get to certain points and you're like, I don't know if I can handle worse than this. Like, this is really bad. And generally it's that point where he lets off and he's like, it's that's the end of the movie,
Yeah.
luckily. But you get to that point and you're like, this I can't handle worse than this.
I
Please,
think,
please let me off this ride.
yeah. And I think this, especially with Requiem, I think Aronofsky drives the point home so well, and he does it like you just said, where he know he knows or knew when the point was
Hmm.
made.
Hmm.
Like, there it is. Now we can
Yeah.
move on.
It doesn't beat it over your head.
Yeah, my brother and I were talking about it, actually. And this movie did make me kind of really think about those controversial films you and I watched, and my brother and I had a whole discussion on them. And I think Requiem is such a great example of the good kind of controversial film, because it is a controversial movie.
Yeah.
It's highly controversial. I mean,
Hmm.
it's attacking pharmaceuticals. Like,
Yeah.
Aronofsky was blatantly told by the studios, you can't have a direct line of stay away from pharmaceuticals, um,
Mhm.
which is kind of like, that was 2000. That's kind of crazy.
Right.
Like, come on, guys. Uh,
Right.
but he does such a great job of being controversial, but for a reason. And he makes the point, and you never have to guess what it is. You know exactly what he's talking about, what he's showing you. You feel
Mhm.
gross, you feel sick, you're sad, you're all the things that he needs you to feel, so that when you go out after the movie, you're able to just kind of like assess.
Right.
Whereas the majority of the movies you and I watched for that episode, completely just like, and we talked about it in length. Um,
Yeah. It's more just this. Look at how gross this is. Doesn't this make you uncomfortable? I'm like,
right.
yes, of course it does.
You can stop showing me, and there you're like, you know what? We'll show you 4 more scenes of this exact act, but we'll make
Right.
it worse every time. And you're like, this is the worst. Um,
Yeah. I got the point a while ago.
Requiem, just kind of like, there are moments during it where you tell yourself, okay, I get it. And then, but by the time it ends, you're like, oh no, like
Mhm.
I get it now.
Yeah. Yeah. There are points where you're like, yeah, I get it. Drugs are bad. I get it. And then you're like, oh, I thought I had it, but I didn't really get the full scope of it. And
Right.
he did take me deeper to actually understand it more.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, Marianne, Jennifer Connelly, I mean, everyone in this movie, I'm like, the performances in this film are just all so incredible because they feel so natural. They feel
Yeah.
real. None of them feel, there's never a moment in it that's like, oh, they really phoned that one in, or they're really working for that one. Man, they're really attempting to cry. It's like,
Yeah.
no,
Trying too hard.
I imagine the set was probably so heavy and just so
Hmm.
like somber most
Hmm.
of the time.
Yeah.
That I kind of can't help but feel some of those scenes, a little bit of real emotion kind of probably peeked through, and just kind of like,
Hmm.
because the cast talked about, I mean, they had actual heroin addicts on set. Jared Leto tried to befriend addicts to kind of
Hmm.
mime his look and the way he acts during the movie, because he was trying to portray it accurately. Um,
Sure. As you do.
but I mean, if you've been around that kind of like those people, or that situation, it weighs on you pretty bad. It's not.
Hmm.
It's going to. It's going to crack your exterior. It just will. Uh,
Yeah, I believe the production was intense. I saw a uh, tidbit on IMDb talking about how the director of photography was during one of Ellen Burstyn's great monologues. It's like kind of started to drift the camera away
yeah.
from her, and it's because he was actually crying into the lens and the viewfinder and fogging it up because it was so intense.
Yeah. And it is intense. I mean, that scene is very like, it's heartbreaking on so many levels. It's probably the most human scene in the movie, just
Hmm.
of you as the audience really connecting to it. Um, but again, we'll get to her monologue. Jared Leto. This
Yeah,
was before 30 Seconds to Mars was really huge, which I'm like, I'm a fan of their first couple albums. Well, first few. They've had a
yeah,
couple good songs here and there, but this, I mean,
totally.
this was Leto.
Was it before uh Panic Room? I should have
No,
looked
no,
this up.
Panic Room came out first, but this was
Okay.
like, I mean, to me, and I could be wrong, but I feel like Requiem was
You are
really.
wrong. Panic Room came out 2002.
Oh, it did. I thought it
Requiem
was before.
2000.
Oh, okay.
No, same year as American Psycho,
Oh,
a year after Fight Club.
man, year 2000. What a great feel good year for some movies, right? You got American
Yeah,
Psycho. Like,
it's true.
although I can find the dark comedy in American Psycho. You guys should check that
Yeah.
episode out. It was a lot of fun talking about that movie. Um,
It is really good.
but this, I'm like, this is Jared. To me, this is Jared Leto just really shown you a lot of acting chops, and
Mhm.
he's made a really great career in
Yeah.
Hollywood. Like, nothing against a lot of the movies that he's made. Great actor,
But some of his
great
most
performer.
more recent stuff, like Blade Runner 2049 or whatever,
Mhm.
it's kind of more his characters are more kind of over the top, I guess. And this is just a normal guy who's super
Yeah.
grounded and has a ma, and like he does a really good job with it.
He does an excellent job. And sure, I don't like Harry right out the gate in this movie. I just feel like
Yeah.
what a selfish prick. Like,
Mhm.
but drugs and addiction can kind of really alter your behavior to make you do stuff that
Totally.
you normally wouldn't do, or maybe you would frown on. So I try to have kind of a little bit of compassion to an extent.
Mhm.
Um,
He has some amount of drive. Like it's not every junkie is like, I will actually take this skill
right.
and turn it into a business.
I mean, granted,
He
his
does try.
business is we will buy this stash, recut it so that we can sell it as our own thing.
Mhm.
We'll make a bunch of dough and then we're going to head out and we'll be kingpins. Like,
Yeah.
someone
I
didn't
think
watch
that
enough
they're
gangster movies when they were growing up.
I
But
I think that their goal early on was just to make a bunch of money so that they could buy better drugs. So
yeah,
it wasn't like the most noble thing
yeah,
ever,
not noble business. But I also
but
kind of have the
some
sense
business.
that, at least at first, especially with some of the conversations between Harry and Marion
Mhm.
about the future of
Yeah.
getting out of Long Beach and having a life together, having a studio where she can design and do her art. Uh, I
Mhm.
think there's early moments of Harry kind of feeling like he is in control
Yeah.
of his drug use, and I think early on he's thinking I can quit it, which is this is very cliche. This is a normal thing or thought process for a lot of
Mhm.
addicts to have, where it's I can quit this at any time. But he never
Right.
blatantly says it, which I really appreciate that that line is never actually said.
Mhm.
I think the direction
It
was
didn't
really
have
well.
to be.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be, and I think the direction was well done, or so well done that you understand kind of like moments for these characters where they believe, oh, I could
Mhm.
kick this at any moment. Like, it does not have a hold of
Mhm.
me. Um,
Yeah, I had the exact same thought of that is basically I got that message from the movie that this is basically the hubris of humanity
mhm.
that, oh yeah, we all know these things are bad, but it doesn't apply to me because I
Right.
know better and I can handle it and I'm better than everybody else and it's not going to get me. And then it of course does
And
because it
then it
gets
can.
everybody.
Yeah. And, I think there's a, I could be wrong, but growing up in the time that we did in the early 2000s, I feel like there was kind of a thought that like drug users were always young. Like, oh, it's
Yeah.
going to be like mid 20s or younger that are getting into this,
Hmm.
because that's all you ever heard about. Uh, I
Yeah.
think Requiem does a very smart thing of being like, Sarah Goldfarb is like 60
Yeah. Your
and
grandma is high right now.
and she is addicted to speed. So
Hmm.
uh,
Yep.
I think it's a good like, and yeah, the thought process of this will never happen to me. I'm in control is such a
Hmm.
dangerous thought to have, whether you speak it out into existence or it just flashes in your head. It's kind of like
Hmm.
I'm not someone that puts a whole lot of stock into the like, oh, the universe or any kind of superstition or whatever,
Hmm.
but you kind of can't help that thought of I will never or I'm in control is like you're it sounds a lot like you're challenging something that if
Yeah.
it exists, it's bigger than you. And I don't know. Is that really a challenge you want to set out?
Right. Yeah, it's best to have a little humility and be like, "You know what? I don't know everything. It could happen to me. I should be a little careful."
I should probably just have like an extra second or two to think about what I'm about to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but Harry is just he has so many moments. I love his scenes with Marion, or his early scenes, because they feel so like these guys genuinely care for each other. They are in love. They want to like have a life.
Mhm.
Marion sees kind of freedom through Harry. Uh, I kind of feel like that turns into she sees like, oh, I can just get high. Um,
Yeah.
man, but Harry is like the moment you see the infection in his arm before it's ever like actually bad.
Yeah.
That's to me, I'm like, that's the nail in the coffin right there of like, oh, this is there is
Yeah.
really no, he is not kicking this shit at all. He is so screwed.
Yeah. That is the yeah, nail in the coffin is a good way to put it, because if there's ever a moment when it should be a wake-up call to be like, "Hey, maybe you should stop putting stuff in your arm because your arm is literally dying in front of you." And you make the decision, "No, I need to do this more," and I
Right.
put another needle in there. You're like, "Yeah, there's no helping you. You're completely
Like,
screwed."
yeah, you have completely just. It's kind of like a complete give up. I mean, he does have that line. Tyrone's looking at him, telling him like, I think
Mhm.
we have to go to the hospital. Like, you should not be doing anything with that arm right now. We got to get you help."
Yeah.
And he shoots up and he's like, "Oh, my fucking arm, man." He's like, "I told you not to do it."
Yeah.
But Harry has that line where
It's
he's
this
like, "I just need to shoot up and it's okay." It's like,
it'll feel better once I do, yeah.
yeah, it's like,
It's the same thing as Marion at the party where it's like, this fix is more important than anything else,
yeah, and
and
it's
that's all you
tragic.
can
It's
do.
heartbreaking because you know that's not exaggerated. That's not
Yeah.
there's like a, oh, we're really going to
No.
oversell this. You're like, nope, pretty positive.
People have done worse than that.
There's probably a high percentage of people right now that are doing this
Mhm.
exact kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
this is dangerous. This is bad. Poor Harry.
Yeah.
His, I guess, visions or his daydreams, the pier with Marion,
Yeah, her on the pier, yeah.
those are in. I love how they're filmed. I love the quiet of it. I love how you can hear the seagulls and just the water. Um,
Mhm.
I
It's
think it.
peaceful.
I think it says a lot when they don't ever actually, they can't touch, they can't actually be together in his visions. And
Mhm.
he, I think Harry has an understanding that like something's wrong. Granted, he goes after it with, well, I'll just shoot up and it'll be okay. um
Right.
but his visions are, especially his last one, is just like, god damn it. uh Come on, Harry, come on.
Right.
um
You want better for him.
you do. You know who an interesting aspect of the story, that I feel is more relevant now, just probably because of past experiences and age, but
Mhm.
the neighbor ladies at Sarah's
Yeah.
apartment. I'm like, I wish they would have interfered more
Mhm.
with Sarah, but granted, Sarah kept so much behind the door that they
Right.
don't
She
know.
obviously had opportunity to interact with other people.
Yeah.
She had ladies that sat outside and she had a folding chair that she would take out and hang out with them. But it wasn't enough, I guess, for her that she still needed. I mean, she still felt lonely. She
Mhm.
still cooped herself up in her apartment watching TV and feeling depressed about stuff.
Yeah. I imagine, especially with like the final scene with Sarah, or the final real scene with Sarah. Um,
Hmm.
I felt like even more of just a, or I feel like there's a even heavier kind of weight to it, just because instead of having like Harry there, or having like friends of Harry, Tyrone, and Marion, kind of seeing the fallout of of the people they know. I thought it was
Mhm.
very kind of humbling and just kind of like, oof, heavier of having Sarah's neighbors be the ones that come and visit her. And the look on their faces when they see her for the first time is just so like, oh my God. And I couldn't help but be
Yeah.
like, man, this is like, these are the faces of families and friends that have to see someone kind of in the
Mhm.
thick of it and like not knowing, is there going to be an out? Uh,
Yeah.
Very intense. But
And you don't really recognize them because they've changed so much.
yeah,
Like, everything's changed for them.
it's rough, man. And I'm like, I had thoughts of like, man, I wonder if I've had friends look at me that way and I just didn't realize it. Have I looked at like a couple people that I've known that have dealt with stuff that way and not realized I was looking at them that way? But I feel like that those
Mhm.
old ladies, the neighbor ladies, are such a great, like, kind of underlining representation of the people close to you. Or
Yeah.
people close to, these situations, like whether they're unassuming and then they have a harsh reality or reality check of like, oh, our
Yeah.
friend or our family member just went through this, is going through this. And it's done in such a interesting way to me because yeah, they sit out on the sidewalk baking themselves in the sun. And Sarah even has that
Mhm.
like, I have the best seat in the spot, or I have the best spot now. Like, I feel like I am someone. But I every time I watch it, I'm like, you said it earlier where she's clearly always had that opportunity. At no point did I ever get the feeling that these neighbors excluded her or ostracized
Right.
Sarah. And
Right.
I'm like, the best seat? I mean, they literally just like, oh, she brought her chair, let's just like, we'll throw her in the mix of all of us, and one's
Mhm.
gonna keep her little whatever the fuck it was called, like that
The,
reflector.
like, reflector thing
Yeah,
that's yeah.
which
So you tan your chin.
I've always felt, for even from a young age to now, like, what a
Yeah.
terrible, odd thing.
Who uses that?
Who
Yeah.
the hell uses this? And then I'm
I've
like,
only ever seen it in, like, movies and TV and stuff.
right, like, did people really use this reflector to get the sun directly on their chin and on their face? Because I'm like,
Yeah. Is it a big problem that if you're out tanning, your chin is too pale and like, your neck because of the shadow from your
right?
chin? I don't understand how it
Does-
works.
Someone explain this to us. Is the chin tan line really that big of a deal? I know like tan lines
Yeah.
are a thing or they're not a. Are tan lines bad or good? I never know which one it is.
Some people like tan lines, yeah, so you never really know. There's probably good and bad.
I don't know.
It's
I don't
it's
get it.
whatever's in style at the moment.
I'll never keep up with that stuff. It's just never
No,
going to
don't worry
happen.
about it.
Uh,
I am gonna get you one of those reflectors for your birthday, though, so that
oh
you
my
when you're an old
God.
man on the beach, you can actually properly tan.
Because I spend so much time on the beach.
You're a huge beach guy. That's what everybody keeps telling me. Um, yeah, so Sarah's alone and lonely in her house, but the TV show that she's watching, I think that's most of it, is that she's, like, obsessed with this show, and and I didn't really know if she actually got a call to be on a show. I know that the call that she gets, it says you're going to be on TV, but it doesn't say you're specifically going to be on that show.
Right.
And so I think that she, through her obsessive mind, assumes or hopes that it would be. Um, but I then didn't know if that call was really real or if she just imagined it or something,
I
or
feel,
what the point was.
yeah, I feel like the phone call was real,
Mhm.
but I feel like so Sarah's so interesting because she's the most relatable on the human level of just like,
Mhm.
you're an unassuming person, you could be lonely, and any hint of attention or acknowledgement and you're going to run with it, you're going to invest all your energy into it and smother it, um
Yeah.
and you're probably going to really overhype it. So she does. I think the call is real.
Hmm.
And I think the call is specifically for you are a possible contestant on a show. We're going to
Hmm.
send some forms out for you to fill out. Um, but although I feel the
She
call is,
never gets those forms, as
but
far as I could tell.
I feel
She doesn't
like
like go to the mail and get them.
it's a scam. I
Could
feel
be,
like she
could be.
totally gets scammed on it, um, which is a shame because I mean, phone calls back then, I think
Yeah,
were easier to scam, and anyone can have an elaborate scam kind of set up.
yeah. It doesn't have to be that believable, even if you're calling a little old lady
Right.
alone at home.
Right. Like, I think it's very plausible that could have been what it is because she fills out forms.
Hmm.
She has something. I mean, her friends help her fill it out. And then she sends it off, and you're like, oh, cool. She's not crazy. But then she goes crazy. But
Yeah, I bet you also are crazy.
yeah, I think the phone call's real. I think the forms that she filled out are real to a point. They were forms that she was giving her personal info on. And
Hmm.
I only have that confirmation because her friends help her fill out the form. But I don't think it was for that specific infomercial show that she watches. Um,
Yeah.
I think if it was a legit, hey, you're a possible contestant, I think it's like on
Hmm.
any possible game show, or it could have been for like we're gonna have a test show. We'll see how it goes. We're
Yeah.
just testing, so it would never see television at all. But you have to
Yeah.
sell it, right? Um,
Right. And I think because of her kind of obsessive nature, that
yeah,
she's obsessed with the show and doesn't have anything to do other than sit home and think about food or think about the show, and for that reason it seems like time passes so slowly that she's like, when am I going to be on it? I'm supposed to be on it.
right.
Like, this is a thing I'm looking forward to doing, but it's been like 2 weeks and it's probably like 3 months from now. And
Right.
so she goes a little crazy because of it.
I'm supposed to be on television. Uh, the infomercial is such
Hmm.
an interesting part to the movie to me because I remember seeing infomercials very similar to this growing up
Yeah. Yeah.
and always feeling like this just feels like a blatant lie. Like the people
Yeah.
that run this stuff feel like you are some of the biggest pieces of crap out there. You're just
Yeah.
stealing from
Preying
people.
upon desperate people.
Yeah, and she's obsessed with it. It's like the only program she watches. And I
Mm.
think just her mental state and her obsession with that one show, because I think she's watching it with this like fantasy of
Hmm.
if I could only get my life on track. And so she's kind of utilizing his
Yeah.
like motivational skills and the three
Hmm.
steps uh as her like kind of basis for her fantasy, if you will, without us ever
Yeah.
actually seeing it. But some of the dialogue that she has kind of leads me to believe she spends her time fantasizing about how life could be or should be, or
Right.
wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. She definitely has that. If I can lose weight, like if I'm going to go on the show, I need to be perfect. I need to
Yeah,
lose
she's
weight.
got to
I
fit
need
in
to
that
fit
red
in this
dress.
fit in the red dress. I need to have my hair just right. And if I can do that, then everybody will see me and
Yeah,
I'll look great and everything will be
it's
great.
always if I can just do yada yada yada, right?
Yeah.
And I
And
think,
Harry will come on and he will be so
yeah,
excited and we'll reconnect and all this stuff.
and I feel that is what makes Sarah the heart of the story. That's what makes Sarah the most relatable, the most intense to watch, and the character that you feel the biggest heartbreak over as you watch the
Yeah.
movie progress is because she embodies, I think, probably 99% of us. I think
Mhm.
I think it's safe to say, I'll try not to generalize or speak for the population, but I think it's highly plausible, most likely, everyone has found
Mhm.
themselves probably at numerous moments in their lives, probably numerous moments a day, if I could
Mhm.
only, or
Right.
once I finally do this, and then you fantasize the outcome. It's like the argument that you play out while you're driving that you're like, this is everything I should have said, blah blah blah, and you fantasize the whole thing, but it's
Mhm.
not. There's no
Mhm.
truth to it. There's nothing tangible to it. Sarah is just, she's everyone on such a stripped down, broken version. And I'm like,
Mhm.
God damn it. Ellen Burstyn is just too good in this movie. She's too good.
Yeah, and I think that that was one thing that I took away from kind of all 4 of their stories is that drugs really are that they're a promise of an easier path, like they're kind of an easy button that they hope that like Ellen Burstyn's character, she is wanting to lose weight so she can look nice and go on the show and just kind of she feels like she can't actually get in shape than like the do the hard work,
Yeah.
do the hard go about it the hard way. And so she's like, if I just take a pill, then I won't even want to eat and it'll be so simple and I'll actually lose weight and it'll be great. And and I think that is so commonly preyed upon that you don't have to eat less. You don't have to exercise more. You can just do this simple thing and the fat will melt off and all of this stuff. Like there's so many diets, there's so many fads, there's so many things that go on and drugs is just another thing to go along with that. And all of them kind of have that. All different characters are like I'm feeling this terrible emotion. Like when Harry goes to see his mom and he leaves and he's crying, and then there's that quick montage of just shooting up,
Yeah.
and oh, I'm fine again. Like I don't have to worry about it. I'm not sad about it. Um, and so they all kind of just use it to as a quick way to fix their lives. But it's not actually fixing it. Like sometimes you really need to do the work.
It's,
Sometimes it's not a bad thing that pain exists in the world.
yeah.
Pain is part of life. If and we all do it. I do it. If I'm like, oh shit, I have a headache and it really sucks and it's just really terrible. Yeah, I've only had coffee and I haven't eaten any food and I've been sitting in my chair at my desk all day and I haven't moved around and maybe I should drink water and eat food and move around and I'll feel better or I can take some ibuprofen instead and I'll be just fine. So like we all do it, but there are better things to do instead.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the human thing of that we're all lazy. We all want to do just the easiest possible thing to make us happy.
We are lazy, and we have definitely become content with numbing or just finding ways to ignore or set
Hmm.
aside pain in any form, really. um
Yeah.
Especially emotional pain, or mental
Hmm.
kind of stuff. Yeah, I think we all do it. I mean, you use probably everyone's daily example of like, man, I've been sitting in front of a computer all day, or I've just been sitting down all day. I haven't
Hmm.
eaten. I've I've just drank coffee. For me, it's like, man, I feel kind of nauseous and sick, and like head is really killing me right now. And I'll think back like, well, I haven't really drank any water. Which, by the way, folks,
Right.
drinking
This is your
water
reminder.
is literally the simplest thing we can do. And it
Yeah.
has every benefit for us.
Right.
Every benefit. It's the simplest thing.
It's literally necessary, required.
It's necessary. It's required for your body to function as it's supposed to. You can
Hmm.
stay healthy if you just drink your water.
Hmm.
And yet hearing people be like, well, I don't drink water because I don't like how it tastes. I'm just not a water person. I'm constantly like, The fuck
Yeah.
does that matter? Drink some fucking water. It's flavorless.
Right.
But like,
Yeah. It's like, oh, it's too painful for me to drink flavorless water. I need to do something else instead.
like
In my dumbass brain, I'm like, well, there's water in coffee, and there's water in beer, and there's water in. So I'm like, I'm getting water,
which
but for some reason, it doesn't count.
people will argue that too. You know, I'll hound on some of the guys I work with because they drink a ton of soda throughout the day, and I'm like, you should be drinking water. They're like,
Mhm.
well, there's water in soda. What do you think they're mixing it with? And I'm like, that's like corn syrup, high fructose corn
Yeah, it's
syrup.
the bare minimum amount of water
And
compared to sugar and all the other
yeah,
things.
and the water you're pumping in there has been altered so that it mixes the syrup like it's supposed to. So it
Mhm.
doesn't count,
There's a
folks.
bunch of shit you can't even pronounce. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm telling you, drink water. Get over yourselves. It's the simplest
Yeah, this
thing
is your
you can
reminder.
do.
You probably haven't drinking any water. Go get some water now.
This is your water break. Drink some fucking water.
Yeah.
God. Anyways, but you're right. I mean, it's so quick and easy to be like, well, I'll just pop some ibuprofen and I'll be all right.
Mhm.
Where it's like, really, the work, it's funny to call it work because I'm like, these are very basic things. And I say all this hypocritically because I'm just as bad
Yeah.
at doing this. Where it's really like, you get a good night's rest. So that means don't turn your screens on for like an hour or two before you go to bed. Don't turn your screens
Mhm.
on for like an hour or two after you wake up. You sleep throughout the night, drink your water,
Mhm.
stay, stimulate your brain with reading or whatever. Be
Yeah.
active,
Get some
go for a
exercise in.
walk, go for a
Yeah.
walk.
Just the most basic
The
amount of
most basic
exercise.
fucking things. And
Like you're an
we're
old 80-year-old man walking a couple of blocks. That's all you got to do.
right. And instead we're like, oh, go outside. Nah, I'm just gonna I'll stay up till 2 a.m. scrolling social media. I'll probably have a
Mhm.
soda with me before I go to bed or a beer or something.
Mhm.
We actively, when I say we, I actively find myself at times of just like, wow, I am
Yeah.
doing the polar opposite. I will tell myself as I'm scrolling, you should have turned this
Mhm.
off a while ago. You could have been sleeping by now. Wake up tomorrow and you're going to feel refreshed. Yeah, just another video or two. Like,
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's goes back to the thing I said at the very beginning. It's not just hard substances. It's
it's
everything,
anything.
random shit. Social media you can be addicted to, like just as
100%.
bad as anything else. Like not everything has the terrible side effects, and if you go off caffeine, you're going to have some headaches and it's going to be uncomfortable. It's not the worst thing in the world, but you still are addicted to it. And the
Yeah.
same with social media. Like you have significant mental, it changes how you think, it changes how you are programmed, what you do, what you need.
Yeah.
You find yourself needing to do that thing. It's because it's a human thing. We're all
It's
addicted to something.
it's so weird with like the social media, the phones. Man, the older I get, the more I'm like, we need to either go back to straight flip phone or those old Nokia or like the little Nokias, right? That the most you could
Yeah.
do on it was play Snake. Um,
I've been like fantasizing about the 80s and what it must have been like to be an adult in the 80s when you don't have any cell phone and you can go out and nobody knows where you are.
why? I mean, we did
And
that in the '90s too, because no one had
yeah,
so
and you're
we had beepers.
or you're a kid and you run around and like I don't it just seems so great.
It
And there's
does.
no going back until China drops an EMP on us. It's
Yeah,
possible.
it's yeah. Um, yeah, I'm like, because cell phones are an addiction. Uh, it sucks when I'll be watching a movie or something. It could be one that I've watched 100 times before, but suddenly, without even
Mhm.
realizing it, like it's just you don't even think about it. Or I don't even think
Yeah.
about it. You'll just like find yourself holding your phone all of a sudden. You come to that realization of like, why am
Yeah.
I'm watching a movie.
It's like you have an internal clock. You're like, it's been a little bit too long since I've held this thing and
You're
done this. And so
like,
you just kind of pick it up and turn it on and open Instagram and start scrolling. And you're like, I don't even like any of the stuff I'm looking at. I don't actually care about any of this. I'm watching a movie. I don't know why I'm doing this.
right. You're like, yeah, it's been like an hour since you checked your notifications. You haven't gotten any,
Yeah,
but you
nobody
need to
cares about
check
you.
on it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
just in case.
I harp on my kid quite a bit because she's on her phone a lot. Um, and she called me out too, where she was like, "Dad, you're on your phone a lot too," and I'm
Hmm.
like, "I know." I'm trying to
Yeah.
do the like, don't do as I do, like just do what I say, don't do what I'm doing. Like I want you to
Yeah,
make a better decision than what I'm doing. So please don't be
right.
on your phone that much.
I know it's wrong. It doesn't mean it's easy to not do
Right.
it.
Like it's a bad habit that I think we all need to break. But yeah, addictions is
Everywhere.
it's everywhere. And sure, not all of them are going to cause you to lose your arm. They're not going to cause you to turn
Hmm.
to prostitution to get a fix, which means you're
Hmm.
probably not going to survive much longer after said events. Uh,
Yeah.
not all addictions are going to get you in jail. Not all
Hmm.
addictions are going to get you like institutionalized, but there are consequences to all of our addictions.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very rough reality that Requiem does. I mean, it does it in the most blunt uh,
Hmm.
way, but it's to me, especially with Sarah, with her many vices, many addictions. Um,
Hmm.
they use Sarah. Requiem does such a great job with Sarah of just showing you like addiction is across the board. Yeah, the focus is usually on substance abuse, but I mean, she was addicted to
Hmm.
her food. She was addicted to sugar. Shit, I
Hmm.
had like 6 Sour Patch straws before we started recording. And I'm like, I literally told myself this morning, I think I'm going to throw away my Sour Patch because I'm eating a lot more sugar right now. 6. Like,
It's like after this one, I'll throw it out. After
right,
this
right.
one, I need a little bit
It's
more.
like quitting smoking. I'll
Yeah,
finish this pack and then I'm done. Like,
right.
are you?
I won't buy another one. I just have this one, and I don't want to waste it. I'll
Right.
keep it
I
and I'll
spent
eat
the
it.
money on this. Well, here's the thing when you're trying to break your habits, trying to break your addictions,
Hmm.
you kind of have to sacrifice something.
Yeah.
I would rather sacrifice something that's like non consequential or at least like not in the long run on a negative
Hmm.
aspect than to have it be something more serious. Words to, I know, practice what you preach, Dustin. I'm trying. God damn it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, people think sugar is harmless, but then you get like diabetes and you lose a leg, and like it's a real problem
It's a
that
real
people can
problem.
have.
You brought up caffeine. I will be the first to
Yeah.
admit, highly addicted to caffeine. Like
Hmm.
if I don't have my couple cups of coffee in the morning, or as my coworkers would probably laugh if they heard me say that because they'd be like, "You drink more than two." I'd be like, "I know." Um, if I don't have coffee, I do have withdrawal symptoms. It's
Hmm.
nausea, it's headaches, I'm irritable, I'm like sweaty.
Hmm.
It's rough.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. That's the transition from summer to fall, is that things are great if you can always have a consistent fix.
Right.
But as soon as you that dries up, you kind of realize how dependent you really are on it. And so if our phones go away, if we don't have caffeine for a couple of days, or whatever, that's when things start to get
That's
real, and you're like, oh, this is more serious than I thought.
yeah, that's when Clint Mansell's incredible score starts playing in the overheads, and you're like, "Oh God, please don't wander
Yeah,
down the street convinced I'm being on TV, but I'm high on speed and completely devoid of reality." Um,
yeah. Yeah, I think that whole sequence, all of the whole half of the movie is incredible because well, you see Harry and Marion kind of their source of buying their drugs to cut and resell dries up, and so they kind of have to start rationing their drugs. So like if we need a little bit now
yeah,
and that'll get us through the night and then we definitely need a little bit in the morning but and then if somebody uses too much it becomes a big fight and all this stuff.
and
And
it's
same for Sarah. She's like, I it's not working. It's not as powerful as it used to be. I need more. I need more.
yeah, Sarah's is man the fall time in Requiem. You hit it. Harry and Marion, like Tyrone seems to have a decent, this is a bad sentence, but he seems to have a decent grasp on his addiction, but he allows
Mhm.
his addiction to kind of make decisions for him. He's not strung out like Harry
Yeah.
and Marion are, but he's like convinced that putting himself in certain situations is okay. Getting in the back of a vehicle with a drug
Hmm.
dealer who's straight up threatening to kill him is okay
Hmm.
because it's just
Hmm.
business. Um, Marion and Harry, yeah, they're trying to like ration out the drugs, and then that turns into rationalizing terrible ideas and terrible
Yeah.
like, well, it'll be okay if you do this. At least we'll get our fix. But when she comes home from sleeping with the
Hmm.
guy to get the 2 grand, like it's instant. Just oh no, there is like there's no going
Yeah.
back. That you've
Yeah. That was the most inexcusable part for Harry for me was him encouraging her. He's like, "Hey, you just need to sleep with this guy and
yeah
sell yourself out, and it's going to be totally fine, and then we'll be set." And she's like, "I don't really want to.
yeah
Like, I don't want to do this, and I'm worried what I'll have to do in order to get it." And he's like pushing her into it, and then when he is sitting at home waiting for her to get back and he starts to like think about all the stuff she's having to do, he just takes drugs and it numbs the pain and it all goes away and
Un-
it doesn't have to worry about it.
until Marianne comes home, and then it is so evident of like there's an understanding between the two of them that now there's a void. They have
Yeah.
crossed a line, and
Cross the Rubicon.
I kind of feel like when Marion is arguing with him, I think that's the one moment for Marion where she's like, maybe if I don't like, maybe this could be our shot. If
Hmm.
we just have to learn how to cut this out. Like maybe this is it.
Yeah.
And Harry pushing her for it and telling her like, it'll be okay. You do it the one time, it'll be okay. I think
Hmm.
Marion kind of takes that as that's all she's worth. And I think that's where
Right.
she totally just gives into it. Like, okay, I guess it's what we're doing.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and which propels her for the rest of her story. And I think it propels
Hmm.
Harry too because he understands. I mean, he blames himself. I take a lot of his stuff, especially his phone call to Marion, as
Yeah.
like he is completely blaming himself for all that has fallen apart. And what's to add on to it, you're like, he doesn't even know what's going on with his mom.
Right. Yeah. They're all doing it alone. Like his mom's alone, Marion's alone, Harry's alone.
Yeah,
It's
it's
it's rough.
it's so rough. Um, yeah, I just let's get to Sarah. I feel like we keep going to Sarah. Um, the part that like first time I watched this movie when I was 15, Um, her hallucinations, I remember being like,
Mhm.
am I supposed to kind of chuckle at a couple of these things, like the refrigerator attacking her and like trying to eat her?
Yeah.
At first, you're like, "Oh, this is silly," or the food floating in her ceiling and the pie like splatting with the actual splat sound effect. Like,
Yeah.
you want to chuckle at it,
Visualizing hamburgers appear on
right?
shelves.
Like we've
Yeah.
seen it done in cartoons, so we get it. Like, oh yeah, I know that.
Yeah, it's like you're on a desert island and you just see a
It's a
juicy
bunch of
steak show up.
mirages, yeah. Um,
Yeah.
but that scene where like you feel like you need to chuckle, she's getting attacked by her fridge, she's hallucinating herself in the red dress, kind of extreme makeup, doing the
Mhm.
um, oh my god, what's the name of that line dance that they're doing?
Conga?
Yeah, thank you. Doing the conga line. I lost the word for a second. That first time I watched it, I remember kind of like getting to a point where you're like this is sad, but like I might start to chuckle. And then
Yeah.
the hard turn where it's like the fridge attacks, all hallucinations, and she's like screaming and running out of her apartment. The
Yeah.
way Aronofsky filmed that sequence where it's like the conga line, you got the music, you got the hallucinations, and then silence, and it's just the TV that like off air biz or the signal.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
what an effective way to just be like, yeah, this is a bad situation. Like she
Mhm.
has lost her mind, and then you have the walk down the street with the music and all that. But Sarah Goldfarb, her monologue, which is the part that I've like, I want to say for later, but I have to get to it. It's killing me.
Mhm.
What a powerful delivery! What incredible
Yeah.
dialogue! We have talked extensively over scenes that have great dialogue in them, great movies with all this stuff. Her scene at the table, this is the one that made the cameraman like, oh, she's out of frame just a little bit, and you totally see it. You totally see like the
Yeah.
camera shift. I'm so glad they
They
left
kept
that in.
kept that take.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the more she talks, and I guess I just never really soaked it in, but I have
Mhm.
over the years, and especially this week, just really soaked it in. Her whole discussion over like, I like the way the pills are making me feel because people see me now. People like they know who I am. I'm do you see where I'm sitting? Your father would be so proud that this is what I'm trying to do. It's
Mhm.
such a like heartbreaking thing because you see Harry, you brought it up earlier, where he understands his hypocrisy in it, and it's like a severe hypocrisy.
Yeah. He really doesn't want her to do it. He knows it's bad, but he's doing it. And he also, I think, kind of understands her point, like why
Right.
she likes how it makes her feel. Like, what's the harm? It is actually helping
Well,
me.
and when she really starts breaking down, um oh, I put it in my notes. Um when she really starts breaking down so honestly and open of how lonely she is and how desperate
Mhm.
she is for just anyone to give her
Yeah.
some kind of validation in existence. I mean, she flat out says like, what's the point of getting up in the morning like this? The thought
Yeah.
of being on television, the thought of like this possibility has given her such a boost to even get out of bed. That's that's heartbreak. Like it's so moving in such a devastating way because I think
Yeah.
again, there are many people out there, or more people than they probably want to admit, where it is hard to get out of bed. And yeah, you might turn to something that's not healthy. You kind of know it's not good for you,
Mhm.
but you're like, this is what's helping me go. So I
Yeah.
guess I'm just going to lean into this. And it's such a slippery slope. Like it's a very dangerous one to go down. Um,
Yeah.
but what breaks my heart probably the most about that whole Not just what she says and how she says. I mean, that is like it is. Holy crap! How? Okay, I'm gonna redirect real quick. Nothing
Okay.
against Julia Roberts. Erin Brockovich, great movie. She does a great job. Don't worry, she does a
Okay.
great job in that movie.
I don't know why you're bringing Julia Roberts into
You'll
this.
you'll understand in a second.
All right.
So in 2000, Best Actress Oscar, Ellen Burstyn was nominated for her role as Sarah Goldfarb. Julia
Okay.
Roberts won it for her role in Erin Brockovich. I like that movie.
Yeah.
It's a really good movie. Julia Roberts is
It's
incredible.
yeah,
Watching Ellen
not like
Burstyn, I'm
this though.
like, how this monologue didn't just
Yeah.
be like, so here's your new standard on how on what we're looking for when it comes to
Yeah.
emotional
It's the bar to
deliveries.
aim for. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, this is a robbed moment right here. I feel Ellen Burstyn. No offense, Julia. You're great.
Hmm.
But wow.
No, I totally agree. Absolutely.
But I think that I don't want to say the cherry on top of like just how heartbreaking that scene is at the dinner table. Her and Harry, one, it's the last time they see each other.
Yeah.
And it ends with broken promises that I think Harry is the only one that understands he's not coming back anytime soon. He's not bringing
Yeah.
Marion home for dinner. His mom's probably never going to
Hmm.
meet Marion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just thinking about that,
She's
I'm
gone.
like, fuck. I need to make sure every interaction I have with like my mom or friends,
Hmm.
whoever, like, oof. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm clean. We're good, but like
But you still all have limited time. You get busy with
limited
stuff.
time, busy, you're gonna get caught up doing shit. Uh
Yeah.
that's that is like that broke my heart this time around. Just that like really understanding that real big realization. And I think age does have a lot to do with it. Um
Yeah.
of just like, wow, this really is the last time they ever actually see each other in this movie. This is the last time that their characters, even past the ending,
Hmm.
if they have futures, um, who knows
If they
what?
have futures, he has less arms and she's been electroshocked. So it's hard to say
It's hard
how
to say.
connected they
It's
can
hard,
even be.
and he's not even in New York. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
he's not even in the same state anymore. That's one of the things Requiem does so well to me, where you view it as a surface thing, but then the more you think about it, you're like, holy crap, the consequences, the
Hmm.
situation is so much bigger and so much worse as you really start to think about it. You're like,
Yeah.
it's a lot to process.
Yeah. This spiraled out of control.
Yeah, but that monologue that she has, I'm like, no wonder that cameraman cried. Like, if there's a scene that's going to make you cry in this movie, it's her monologue.
Hmm.
It's just so powerful. And then you think about her monologue during the whole finale, and it's just like, this is, I mean, none of it was worth it.
Yeah.
Not a single thing these guys do was worth anything where they ended up. Um,
Hmm.
which I guess brings us to that part in the movie.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's always the hope. There's always the possibility that it could have worked out. They could have gotten a big score. They could have
Yeah.
sold it all and gotten rich and turned their life around. But it's a gamble. This
It's
whole life is a huge
a
gamble,
huge gamble.
and it didn't pay off for them.
Like at all. I read
No.
an interesting thing that Darren Aronofsky said of all the characters, the only one that could have like hope for a future is Tyrone. And then he tried to
Yeah.
foreshadow that, or not foreshadow, but kind of hint towards like a possible future with the memories of the mom. You know, he's looking at the photo, or he has
Yeah.
the
It's the closest thing to a happy ending in this movie for sure.
right, and he's having it behind bars. Uh,
Yeah. detoxing currently.
Yeah, he's being forced to sober up. He's being forced to clean up. There's no
Yeah.
weaning him off of the drugs. You're
Yeah.
gonna,
Cold turkey withdrawals.
and I think they did a great job of showing him with like the sweats and the shivers, and I think it's such an interesting decision that everyone goes into the fetal position, which is like the most vulnerable, most just
Mhm.
broken kind of position.
Infantile.
Yeah. Um, but man, that whole montage at the end between them
Mhm.
being arrested and they never make it to Florida. What state are they in when they get arrested? I don't remember.
I don't recall.
But being arrested, being separated, Harry having his arm amputated,
Mhm.
Marion is putting on a sex show for a bunch of really gross old men throwing cash at her and drugs at her.
Yeah.
Like, ugh. Sarah's getting institutionalized. And the saddest thing, I was trying to think, like, when does this movie? I've never thought of this, and it's probably due to it came out in 2000, so technology wasn't really like a thing. Well,
Mhm.
it, you know what I mean.
They
It
have
wasn't.
television.
I know, but technology wasn't like so dependent on.
Yeah.
But the movie, it kind of looks like it takes place in the 80s, maybe early
Mhm.
90s. Like it's no one's got the cell phones. No, I mean they're using the corded phone. There's no caller
Yeah,
ID.
Noah's talking about the internet. Yeah.
Yeah. The infomercial on. I mean, she's got rabbit ears on her TV. Uh,
Yeah.
but I was thinking about that. Like, wow, institutions in the 80s were still kind of known for, although significantly better than hospitals
Mhm.
and institutions in the 50s. Still kind of rough around the edges. Still kind of like, well, there's no hope for you, ladies.
Yeah.
So we're gonna get you to sign this document, even though you are not.
That's That's the thing that stuck out to me. I was like, there's no way like she's even close to coherency to understand what you're telling her
Yeah,
and to reasonably sign this document of consent. There's no way.
there's no
But they
way.
totally just take it as like, this is normal. And I mean, the whole process, the whole hospital process is infuriating where she's brought in, they keep giving her different drugs, nothing's really working. The orderlies or nurses or whatever they are kind of treat her like a slab of beef and just kind of
Yeah, there's no
manhandle her.
care.
She's not like a person. Yeah,
Yeah,
she's not a person at all. And she's conscious, more or less, and aware of what's going on, even though she's strung out and her mind is damaged from all of the drugs she's been mixing and all this stuff. But yeah, that was the most shocking part, is that she just signs this thing and surprise, you're going to get electroshocked into oblivion for experimental
yeah. We're gonna
mental
fry your
processing.
brain, and when you're able to walk on your own again, we'll call it a success. But you are
Yeah. See if it
never,
works.
yeah, you are never going to be who you were before the drugs.
Mhm.
You're never going to be, you know, kind of oddly, although she was overweight at the beginning of the movie, but that's like kind of the healthiest that she is during the
Yes.
whole film. Um,
Yes.
yeah, she's like you're permanently broken. You're never going to be able to sustain yourself. You can never be on your own. You are now completely
Mhm.
dependent upon the state.
Yeah.
And
For the rest of your days.
yeah, it's just like, and the music every time they shock her, that like the high strings that go on every time, you're just like, oh god. Did you find yourself the first time you watched it, or maybe even the second time as well, by
Mhm.
like the third shock with
Yeah.
all the montage, did you find yourself just finally being like, oh my god, like was that your
Yeah.
moment of like, I don't know how much more I'm gonna be able to
Yeah.
handle? Yeah.
It was pretty much exactly. I was like, they're not surviving till winter because this is too much. And yeah, it was mostly how many times are they going to shock this poor woman?
Yeah. It's
Like
like
1, 2, okay, I get it. But like 10, whatever, you just
it's
shocked her
like
way too many times.
I think it's 4 times, but it feels like you have seen her get shocked so much. But her whole hospital experience is
Yeah.
unreal to me. You nailed it. You said it really well. Um, I think it does. I think what makes me so mad about it is how they lull you into this doctor like getting on her level and checking her and being like,
Hmm.
"Hey, Sarah, we're gonna take good care of you. Like we're gonna work with you. We're gonna get you healthy again." And then
Right.
you believe like, "Oh, it's a doctor, so yes, let's give our trust to the doctor because they're what is that
Right.
oath they take, the Hippocratic oath or whatever it is."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like care for people. You're going to do everything in your power to care for someone regardless
Do
of
no
everything
harm.
else. And then
Yeah.
the orderlies come in. Sure, they're going to have their own conversation, but yeah, the way they just like toss her around, they're like, okay.
Spoon feeding her,
The
like
feeding scene is,
forcing her to swallow it
I'm like,
by.
I get you have to be forceful at times. Like, you have to swallow this.
Mhm.
But to downright like suffocate this woman and hold her in a headlock, she's a feeble old woman who's strung out. She's
Yeah.
not gonna put up a big fight. Like she physically won't be able to. And you're
Hmm.
suffocating her essentially. Like, god
Right.
damn it. The whole
Yeah.
feeding tube down the nose was like, oh, there's
Yeah.
no like, and the way that they
Yeah.
approach it the whole time of just like, are you going to work with us? And then they carry on with just, there's no
Yeah, like she's the
finesse.
problem and not like you're there to help. Like she
Yeah.
needs help and she's not going to get it from anybody.
Yeah. But all that stuff, even up to the electroshock, I think it just carries over so much frustration and anxiety that when she does get
Hmm.
shocked, you feel like it's so many more times than it actually is because it's just like constant. Sarah, her whole life is gone.
Yeah.
Like, yes, all 4 characters survive. Yes, Sarah survives. But do they? I
Does
mean,
she?
but for how
Yeah.
long? That's kind
And
of
not the same Sarah that we had
ever.
before.
Yeah. I mean, she can't even talk. She doesn't say like
Mhm.
any words for the last 20 minutes of the movie. I think the final line she
Mhm.
says is call Seymour, tell him to meet me at the station. And then
Mhm.
that's like it, which is sad because Seymour's the name of her deceased husband. You're like, oh my God.
Husband. Yeah.
It's like, that's like the actual confirmation she is no longer attached to reality.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like she's gone. I don't know if it's induced dementia or what, but it is like adjacent to
Yeah.
dementia.
Um, but yeah, the whole, all the splicing of Harry's arm, him in the lineup when they're trying to figure out who's on work detail,
Hmm.
the way they grab his arm to look at it is just like,
Yeah.
now I've never had
Yeah, and
that.
how much worse it looks than it did in the
Oh
car.
God,
You're
it's
like,
so
"Oh,
bad.
there's no way you're keeping that arm."
Yeah. The close up of the saw going into it, and just the way
Mhm.
the music crescendos and then has that like, normally a moment like that in a movie would be the breather, but
Yeah,
I find that moment in this movie to not, you don't take a breath, you just kind of,
you can't breathe.
yeah,
Yeah,
you just, oh. it's like
yeah.
it's like your official, yeah, defeat. Like, there it is,
Yeah,
TKO. It's
yeah,
everyone's out. Um,
absolutely.
my if these 4 characters were to continue,
Mhm,
one, how long do you think they would survive if any of them survive?
mhm.
And would you say any of them could actually be redeemed post events of Requiem?
It's hard to say because, I mean, they all need well, with the exception of Sarah, I think the other three of them kind of need to find that rock bottom. And you really hope for Harry, it's losing his arm and being in the hospital and being taken care of. And that's a great place to rebuild your life from and have the story to tell. Like I ended up here, I lost my arm, I learned to live with it, I moved on. That would be a great story. I don't know if that's what happens or not, because it's very well could not happen. Same for Marion. Like she's in an okay place. She, like she's kind of being taken care of, but she's also kind of being handed out and abused and all of this other, like mostly being
Yeah.
handed out and abused, like not kind of. And so I've certainly heard stories of people like that have like been in that life. It's been terrible, gotten out, learned to heal and been okay. And it's possible, but unlikely. And I do agree with Aronofsky. I think Tyrone has the best chance being in prison and having the vision of his mom and all that stuff. He is probably the most redeemable and the closest to a happy ending. Um, but still, you're in prison. You're a junkie. And there's drugs in prison. People still find ways to get drugs in prison. It's no big deal, and so it's entirely plausible that it doesn't go much
Yeah.
further than that, or he just continues to be in and out of the system and all this stuff, or connecting with other people on the inside and and thinking he's building a business and building connections and networking, but he's really just digging himself deeper into the criminal underworld. So I have very low hope for any of them surviving. It's just not very positive on any front.
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like Tyrone would be the highest. He would have the highest chance of making it.
Mm-hmm.
Should he actually get clean in prison? They never say what his sentencing looks like. You imagine
Yeah.
80s, 90s in the South. I hate saying this, but he's black.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not getting a light sentence, especially for
Mm-hmm.
heroin. It's not,
Yeah.
um, but I would hope,
Yeah, and they tend to be harsher on drug charges, or try to be harsher
yeah,
on drug charges than even assault and murder and stuff
which
sometimes.
is a little crazy, but I think Tyrone would have the best shot. Saying that is like, that doesn't mean it would be an easy shot. I feel best shot of getting
Yeah.
clean, very rough road to clean, to sobriety.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and
Harry,
even if you get there, it's always a challenge to maintain.
yeah,
It's a lifelong battle to maintain that.
I think Harry would be. I don't think Harry would make it too much farther. I
Yeah.
think. I think being released from the hospital, because he wouldn't be there for very much longer. Um, I think Harry would. I think his sadness and
Yeah.
addiction would get the better of him.
I'd completely agree. I think that losing an arm or losing any sort of appendage and feeling like not a full person is a huge thing to try to deal with,
Mhm.
and it's so easy for depression and other things
Oh
to creep
yeah,
in because of that, and so you try to numb it, of course, and
and I
it
also
just
feel
leads you down that
like,
road.
I don't know if it's just my brain being like, let's see how much more depressing we can make Harry's story potentially. Um,
Yeah.
but I feel like Harry's chances of making it out, making it clean, and having a life post all of this would drastically drop if he somehow made it back to New York, found out what happened to his mom, or even reunited with Marion. I think a reunion with Marion would probably be the nail in the
Yeah.
coffin for him. I think he would actually go. Um,
Yeah, if he ran into her but she didn't want to leave her new life,
leave
that
her
would
new
be pretty
life, or
terrible.
him just seeing what she's kind of made peace with. I think
Yeah.
that would just absolutely be too much on Harry. Um,
Yeah, she's more of a shell of a person than she used to be.
yeah, I don't think. I don't think Marion would make it much longer after the events of Requiem. In fact, I would say she would probably be dead uh, shortly after Requiem. I think it would
Mhm.
be. I don't even think it would be an accidental overdose. I think she would. She would probably get one more fix and be like, "Well, this is it." Which again, I'm like, is my brain just trying to figure out like what's the worst outcome for this?
Yeah,
But there's just
it's practical.
it's that smile she gives when the camera's on her. It's that little smirk that she
Mhm.
has that I'm like, oh, I think you're the first one to go. Like
Yeah,
that sucks. I don't want that for obviously it'd be so much better if these characters all found sobriety and were able to get a life, but I'm like, I think
yeah.
Marion would be gone very shortly
Mhm.
after the movie. And Sarah, I would hope that Sarah finds some rehabilitation to be able to speak again, to get some like
Yeah,
memory, maybe her neighbor friends, they come to visit her. I would hope that her neighbor friends continue to visit and to continue to just
yeah.
try and be there for Sarah before she passes, hopefully of natural causes. Um,
Mhm. Yeah, it's hard because there's a level where it's worse to just be a vegetable sitting in
right.
a chair all day, every day, and in this comatose state. And it's better to move on in some cases, and so you don't want that for her.
Yeah. So it's hard, obviously obviously I would much prefer they all get their shit together and have a life
Hmm.
after the movie. Um, I just don't think that's how those characters would end up. I think their trajectory would just be
Yeah.
absolute rock bottom and they don't make it. My daughter asked me because I was telling her about this movie a little bit and prep for it. And she was like, so do like characters kill themselves in it? Like, does everyone die? And I told her, I was like, well, that's the thing. Like, no one dies in this movie. The
Hmm.
only deaths that you see in the movie is the gang guys that get shot up
Yeah.
in the car. I was like, no one else dies. But that's why the movie's so heavy, is because it leaves you with just this like open ending of I think we all know what probably happens, but we don't got to show you for you to have that like weigh on you.
Right. Right. We all know where this lifestyle leads.
Yeah. Um, but she was like, you watched this when you were 15? I was like, yeah, I did. I watched it. And then I made my mom and dad sit down and watch it with me, which I had originally hoped. Uh, I was like, it's a super long shot because we all know how parents are with like remembering every movie we forced
Hmm.
them to watch with us when we were young. But I was like, it'd be really interesting to ask them what their impression of the movie was the first time they watched it and what was going through their heads when they watched this movie with their 15-year-old son. Uh,
And why is he so excited about it?
right. But they were both like, Dustin, it's been like 20 years. Like,
Yeah.
my dad was like, I really don't remember the movie hardly at all. He goes, I know it was like a big deal for you, but I don't really remember it. My mom was like, oh, I kind of remember watching it and just feeling like this is weird to be watching with you. But she was like, I don't really remember the movie either. And rewatching it
Hmm.
this week, because I talked to them before I rewatched it again. Rewatching it, I was like, I bet I would be willing to put money if I could go back in time and
Uh-huh.
watch, like, to see it, like be a,
Yeah.
they can't see me, but I can see them. I
Hmm.
bet my folks were fucking horrified watching this movie with me.
They were probably like, "Does this kid realize that Jennifer Connelly's Bush is in this movie?"
No,
And you're sitting there oblivious to the
completely
world.
oblivious to that. Complete. In fact, for the longest time, with as many people as I forced to watch Requiem after I first saw it, I was even convinced that like the only nudity in the movie was the sex scene
Mhm.
between Tyrone and his
Yeah.
girlfriend. And then like you rewatch it and it's like
You forgot
rewatching
the ass-to-ass
a
dildo
yeah, it
scene?
just never clicked. I think why it never clicked was legit. I was so invested in just the like consequences of everything, just this
Yeah.
journey of how horrible
It's really not about that.
it's
It's not about
yeah.
it. Like,
And,
"Oh, it's a sex scene."
and the you know Marion's finale in the film, like yes, it's a highly sexualized scene, but it's not done in a way that's like, ooh, you should think this is sexy, you should think this is
No.
hot. It's done in such a gross way that your brain should be just like
Mhm.
instantly shutting it down and being like, this is wrong. So it doesn't even
Right.
like compute.
All I felt was a huge amount of empathy for this poor girl,
Yeah.
and also hatred towards these
Oh,
douchebag
man.
business
It was,
dudes that
it's
are
just like,
like
you guys are,
the customers of this
yeah,
situation,
it's
yeah.
so gross. And I'm like, it's a good thing I've seen Keith David in redeeming roles before because this one is.
It's a good thing I just saw him in They Live because that is okay.
But yeah, so I was hoping to be able to give like my parents' perspective, but I am unable to. Um, but I do think it's interesting that as a 15-year-old boy, I did not focus on any of the sexual stuff in the film, which
Yeah,
I mean, there's not a lot, but what's in it
no.
is there, yes, but um, again, it's not there to make you be like, ooh, hot. It's like,
Mhm.
no, this is the absolute definition of what's wrong with our world. Uh,
Right.
so yeah. How do you think your folks would fare with this one?
I don't I would say it's most likely not their cup of tea. I think I'm
100%.
pretty confident they've never seen it and have no intention of seeing it.
Yeah.
Um, if they did see it, yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I
It's
I
a
don't
hard
know.
movie to be like, is this your cup of tea? Because I'm like, I don't know if that's a right
Yeah,
phrase for this
I don't
movie, but
I don't know if I would say it's my cup of tea, but I liked it. Like, I
yeah,
definitely like it. I see value in it. I would own it. I think it's a really, really good movie with a lot of a lot of great qualities. I mean, we've
yeah,
talked about it for over 2 hours
yeah,
now, and have we could talk about it a lot more with just getting into the characters and the meaning and the arcs and all this stuff. But I think just watching it and taking away the meaning of their journeys,
yeah,
it's something that adds value to your life. And so I think it's definitely a great movie that does all of the things it sets out to do really, really well.
yeah. Well, I feel validated hearing you say that because I really do uh preach this movie. I am a huge like it's just this work everyone needs to watch this. Like, god damn it, this is an important movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate for it. So to hear you to who has you just saw it,
Yeah.
that gives me I feel like it gives me uh extra boost of like, see, I know what I'm talking about. This movie is like it's important.
Yeah.
Like
And I would certainly say it's intense and it's not for everybody, but I would also say it's not as bad as most people say it would be. And so
yeah.
you shouldn't be scared off by people that say, "Oh, it's so intense and it'll break you," or whatever. Granted, take that with a grain of salt. I've seen the top
We
10
kind of
most
watched movies that are
offensive
just like
movies ever.
oof. Um
And, yeah, we did a whole episode on the most offensive movies ever, and those were terrible and irredeemable, but this one, I think I think that more people should see it. It's intense, but it's manageable
mhm.
and meaningful for sure. I liked it.
And then I guess my last real wonderment was advised you, like, maybe don't watch it with Christy because she might not react
Mhm.
well to it. Uh, Thoughts on that? Having watched it.
Yeah. I think that she would do better than I thought she would before
Okay.
I had seen it. I think that she hasn't seen it, and she doesn't have a strong desire to, but I think at some point, I mean, she's liked Black Swan, she's liked Mother, she's
Mhm.
liked all these other things, and so I think if she can handle those, she can handle this. Um, I think the only caveat or asterisk is that she has had closer experiences with um, people who are addicted to
Yeah.
things and family members and stuff. So I think it could hit closer to home for her, which maybe would make it more realistic. So people should consider that as well. If you've experienced something more, maybe it would trigger those kinds of
Yeah.
things in you more. Um, and that could be why I don't care because I have no connection at all. It's just a piece. It's a movie to me. So that's possible.
You have managed to stay away from some of that stuff, which I think if I was younger,
I
like,
took the Dare pledge.
hey man, so did I. I fucking excelled at the Dare program. I'll never drink alcohol. Yeah.
Pot is
Uh,
bad.
yeah. I'm always going to advocate for this movie.
Yeah.
I genuinely believe in this movie. It definitely made me a huge fan of Darren Aronofsky. He's got like such a unique and specific eye for, I guess, showcasing a lot of the harder aspects of our lives and just kind of like,
Yeah.
hey, we like to shy away from this stuff. We like to be numb to it. Nope.
Right. Yeah, and there's such an interesting thing in human beings that we're all vulnerable to certain things and we're all, I mean, there's so many parts of humanity that is dark and twisted and gross, and we like to just ignore
Mhm.
that and focus on the sunny side or the greener pastures or whatever. Um, but there's also, I think, a good thing to see all aspects of what life is and to take the good with the bad, and it just makes the good better. So
Yeah.
I appreciate his style and his courage to not just make something that's
Mhm.
entertaining and interesting, but to actually make something that's real and honest and human, um,
Kind of
in all
challenging.
aspects, whether it's yeah, whether it's a fantasy
Yeah.
terror thing like Mother that's more historic or biblical or mythological, or it's something like this, which is grounded and as real as the random person you see on the street and their life story, like it could be them.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it absolutely.
Well, I think just to put it out there, obviously kind of a harder, this is probably our most serious episode I think we've
Yeah, I think
had.
so.
Just subject matter alone is gonna naturally do that. So I think it is important to still say this. It might be cliche, but I think it's important regardless. Like, substance abuse and addiction, it's a real thing. It's frightening and it's detrimental and will
Hmm.
destroy lives. So obviously, get help. You
Hmm.
know someone, try to help them, try to get them help. Do the necessary
Yeah.
things. It's important. Um, learn from Harry, Marion, Tyrone, and Sarah, uh, and just kind of be there for each other. You know,
Yeah.
just be there for each other.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing is that they all isolated
Yeah,
themselves and didn't have anybody in their corner, helping them out. And also, they all felt like this was the most important thing. This is the thing that they need, and they need it in order to feel better, and nothing else will make them feel better. Completely ignoring the fact that this is the worst that you could
right.
possibly feel and the worst life you could possibly
Like,
have. If you get off of this, everything will be
like
better.
you can
So,
make something of yourself if you get past this. So yeah,
yeah,
if you
just
know
try to
someone
see
or
the
if
bigger
you're
picture.
struggling, go get help. Like, rehabilitation centers are way better these days than they used to be in the 80s and 90s. So utilize them. It's a good thing. I think getting help is a sign of strength, not weakness. I know a lot of people find it to be kind of stigmatized. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, totally agree.
And then on a complete 180, just when we brought you guys down, hopefully we didn't bring you down. Hopefully it was just a good, engaging conversation. I think we both knew going into this one, it was going to be a kind of a tougher conversation, kind of more serious side.
More serious, more real. And that's why we have a whole recovery period.
Dude, we have a month long of just bringing it back.
The next 3 episodes are going to be light and fun.
Yes.
And so next episode, we're doing our top 10 comedies, which I think we both were not super happy with our original recording of that. Not just for the sound quality issues, but also the choices we made.
Yeah.
And so we are putting a lot of effort into choosing our top 10 comedies.
Yeah.
It's a little overwhelming, but we're doing our best. And then, December as well. We have very nostalgic, fun movies that we enjoyed as kids.
You know, Christmas time, the holiday season, Thanksgiving through Christmas time, it's my favorite time of the year. I love the holidays. But we both feel like it's legitimately the happiest, or at least it's supposed to be the happiest time of the year. So we thought, let's end the year. We're not doing like an actual Christmas episode, but we're doing just super happy, super nostalgic, joyful stuff, uplifting. It'll be, I'm stoked for it. I'm really stoked for the December episodes. I think those are going to be a freaking blast.
Me too.
And then, so don't worry. We're bringing it back up to be lighter and happier and silly. So appreciate you guys. Thank you for listening, watching, subscribing, doing all that good stuff. And what are your thoughts on Requiem for a Dream? Did it hit you as like it did us, or did you take away like more than what we talked about tonight or today, whenever you're listening or watching? Let us know. Let us know if you've done the insane thing of marathoning Aronofsky films.
I think that's just you.
Oh man, it probably is.
Nobody else would have done that.
I'm sure whoever, like, someone has to hear me say that and be like, what the fuck?
Are you dense?
Are you stupid? What why would you do that? If Darren Aronofsky ever listens to the episode, he'd probably be like, oh, thanks, man. But like,
it's like, thanks. I put a lot of work in those. I think they're really good movies. I appreciate
that. But I wouldn't even binge watch my movies. So But we appreciate you guys. You guys rock. Thank you for all of the support. Keep it up. It helps us out a lot. So
it does. All right. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.